Yeah, yeah, no, we'll just. Yeah. Thank you. He's gonna be here. So, okay, we should be good. Okay. Hmm. And this is not for 20. We're gonna go to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Want to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for telling me. I told you guys at the end of our last meeting.
Right, yeah, I think formally we want to put the vote. Great.
They're having a meeting tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, baby, that's.
Abby, you know, nice to meet you.
I know.
You guys met it. I've met everyone there. I saw Joe when he was doing his paper. I saw Barry last one.
Barry, everybody, Steven should be here in a second.
Couple people. Megan, I know Megan. Megan, she's like coming to bother her.
I see this once in a while. Yeah, like that.
What's the Wi-Fi?
Oh, I will.
I'll do that. Got it, yeah. Oh, that's how I was going. When was the print for you?
Steven should be back in a second. He just went up to the car. Are we all ready? Right. It was either in the packet or. Which one? The one from each sheet where the butter wanted to change the line by line in the decision, and she wanted to change in the management plan. I got a bunch of late. Yeah, it is. Problem is we have a month. We come in the last second. There were a few letters. Okay, good evening, everyone. This is a little different. Welcome, everyone, for our actual live meeting, in person. It's been a couple of years since we've had that, and I apologize if I'm a little rusty. I probably don't even remember how to do this anymore, other than making the introduction to the governor's, mandate. So again, welcome, and I'll just start. This is the meeting of the Nantucket Planning Board, April 10th, and we're going to go, instead of all the formalities, I'll go right to calling the meeting to order, and I would ask for an approval of the agenda. So, is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Dave, seconded by Nat. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Wow, we don't have to poll the the board, so we'll go right to the minutes. I understand there were two minor amendments by Mr. Rector. If that's okay, I would look to approve the minutes for March 9th, 2023 and March 13th, 2023 with Barry's minor amendments through staff.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, through you, they were just basically small little typos that weren't of any substantive nature whatsoever. So I'd make a motion, we approve those.
And also, I'm sorry,
March
March 20th, 2023.
Yep, please.
Okay. Motion's been made by Barry. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Joe seconds. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous? Great. Moving right along, secondary dwellings. We have 4 secondary dwellings. Is there, I see that one Eli Place, I believe that was continued. Is that
Yeah.
correct, Meg?
Yeah.
So we're going to remove that as well. We have 3. If there's anyone that needs to mention, recuse. If not, I'll read them off and we'll entertain a motion to, I'll take a motion for those. Brooke Meerbergen, excuse me, 9 Lewis Court, DJ Wells Investments LLC, 91 Humming Pond Road, PNM Reese Trucking Incorporated, 10 Green Meadows. Is there a motion discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
do you also want to include the tertiary dwellings as well too?
I'll take those separately. There's
All right.
only one.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we approve all secondary dwellings with the findings and conditions as denoted.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion made by Barry, second by Nat. All in favor?
Aye.
And, let it be known that it's unanimous. Tertiary dwellings, we have 1, Margaret Caro and Phil Taylor, 21A Pine Grove Lane. Anyone needs to recuse or discuss? Hearing none, is there a motion?
So move, sir, to accept the tertiary dwellings with the appropriate findings and conditions as denoted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made by Barry, seconded by Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
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 And there are no opposed, unanimous. Moving on to A&Rs. We have 3 of them. Town of Nantucket, New Hampshire Ave, Massachusetts Ave, California Ave. Then we have 64 Pocomo Road Realty Trust, 64 Pocomo Road. And then I believe 12 Knobsco Way, we're going to hear at the public hearing. So we're only going to be voting on the first 2 for now. Any discussion, motion?
No, motion to endorse, sir.
Second.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made to endorse by Barry, seconded by Dave. For the two, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And it's unanimous. Okay, we're moving on to previous plans, Bittersweet Lane subdivision for endorsement of the plan. Meg?
Sure. So the applicant has submitted the final plans for endorsement and our recommendation would be to endorse the plans as submitted.
Okay. Board?
Been a while on this one.
Hearing no objection, sir, I'm gonna make a motion, we endorse.
I'll second.
Okay, no discussion. Motion has been made to endorse by Barry, seconded by Joe. All in favor? Aye.
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 No opposed, is unanimous. Thank you. And we have another previous plan, a Form J release for 5 Blewett Court. Meg?
So the applicant is requesting for just a single lot release. We are working with them in connection with Ed Pesci on a larger release for the remaining lots on that roadway, but for the purposes of this meeting, they're just moving forward with the single lot, which staff is comfortable with recommending endorsement of that Form J.
Thank you, Meg. On board?
I'd make a motion to approve.
Second. That's for an endorsement, right?
Form J for the single lot release?
Endorsement.
right?
Yes. Okay, motion's been made by Dave, seconded by Barry. All's in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. And now we are on to preliminary plan, Pennell Ames, 5 Knobska Way.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Arthur Gasparo, Nantucket Engineering for the applicant. We're before you tonight with a preliminary plan for the subdivision of this parcel on Knobska Way. The intent or our hope at this point is, given the pending warrant article, to enact the zoning freeze. And where we've come up with this preliminary plan for you, which contains adequate frontage and area, and all lots meet regularity. So with that, we'd be happy to address questions or concerns that you might have with the layout.
Thank you, Art. Board, any questions?
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion at this point. We approve the preliminary plan as it is proposed. Say that 3 times fast.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Barry, seconded by Nat to approve a preliminary plan for 5 Knobska Way. All's in favor?
Aye.
And let it be known it's unanimous.
Thank you.
Art. Okay, moving on to public hearings. I see that the Westmore Club was, there was a request to continue. Also, 2 Eli Place as discussed before, request to continue. And 40 Old South Road LLC, 2A and 2B Forest Ave, request to continue. Do we want to?
Motion to accept the continuances.
Second.
And I believe the action deadlines for all of them are still in force
Yep.
and not in jeopardy. Okay,
Yep.
motion's been made to continue. Are we looking to continue to the next meeting? Is that correct, Meg?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Barry's made the motion to continue
Second.
to next meeting, seconded by Nat. All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And it is unanimous. Okay, moving on, do we have? I wanted to see if Tucker, okay, great. So we're moving on to Act Mid Island LLC and Act Offices LLC, 18, 18A, 20, 22, 24, and 26 Sparks Ave. And Meg, I believe Dan Malloy is here for the applicant. Welcome, Dan. Nice to see you
Evening,
in person.
welcome back. Dan Malloy for the applicant. Steve Cohen is here with me as well. So just want to give the board a fairly quick update tonight as to where the project stands, so you know what's going on with it. There's been a few minor updates to the site plans. The board's offered some comments. We've given a new plan out there. I think it was talk of some rumble strips and things to be added to the plans. So we have that in the plan set now. We can go into further detail. Ed Pesci is still ongoing in his review. That's happening as we speak. Comet Water Company has issued their certificate of approval on the project. We have our traffic consultant here tonight. If anybody has traffic specific questions I'd like to go in the report. However, the traffic report, I believe, will be going out for a peer review. So if you want to talk that tonight, we certainly can, or if you'd rather wait until that peer review is completed, we can put that off for another time. As part of the package, you should also have a parking management plan, which we've laid out in terms of how we want to produce resident-only spacing at different times of day for spacing. Again, we can review that tonight if you'd like, but I expect that'll also be part of the traffic review that will happen. So again, we're here for some of those questions we have, and we can certainly continue those questions to another meeting as time goes on. The abutters, we're working with both parties. I believe the board may have, I'm not sure if the board or some of the staff may have received an email from House Fitters side. We're very close with getting easements secured and agreements with the shared driveway on that side. We're working with the Cumberland's Farm side to still get that worked out on their side. We had made some plan changes on driveway entrances in terms of shifting things to satisfy their concerns. So that's a work in progress right now as well. I think if you see the plan right now, the layout of the plan, the parking, the driveway access points everywhere. There's a very efficient flow of traffic. The driveways, there are only 2 of them. It shares very well with all the abutting properties, which I think is exactly what the board and the Mid-Island plan was looking for. Mr. Coleman is also here. He can get into some of the details. I believe Tucker Holland is here. Some other minor updates we can give you. If you have any other questions, thank you.
Thank you, Dan. While Dan's still up there, board. Any questions for Dan? Okay. Hi,
Thank you.
Stephen, welcome.
Sure. Good to be back. I want to sort of.
Just identify.
Oh, sure.
for the-
The applicant. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Steve. The issues that we're pursuing that we hope to have wrapped up for the next meeting that I just want to make sure we're on the same page as the board on are that we are essentially going all in on the idea of the shared access on both sides and want to get a confirmation not only that the board likes where this is going, but that it's important to the board and that that we feel strongly about, which I think is the case. But I'm just looking. I see the nodding heads. That we're good.
Yeah.
And then the other thing. So we seem to have, I would say, 95% agreement with the house fitter side. There's that 3-unit condo over there. On the other side, we're getting there. We're probably more closer to 50%, but we're hoping to wrap that up and get it closer too. It is, I think, a benefit for the whole community if the Mid-Island plan of having that shared access and shared parking actually gets implemented the way it was supposed to. So that would be good. The second issue is that even though this project does not require any affordable housing under the regulations that it's being proposed under, we are trying to make it work to have a 25% affordable housing ratio, and we're working on having a year-round restriction in place. And I'm not committing to either of those things, but I'm telling you that we're working on proposals that hopefully will result in both of those being something we can commit to in the near future. So I assume the board likes both of those. I just wanted to give you an update on this.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Any for the board before I open it up? We'll open it up to the public.
Curtis
Hello.
Barnes. I'm just curious if the board is comfortable with the parking. As I look at the diagram up there, it looks very, very tight. And I have a concern because we use those facilities a lot. So I want to be very sure that ultimately, whatever you do decide has adequate parking and it's not too tight to squeeze in. If you look at that plan, it really looks tight. So I appreciate if you keep very careful look at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Curtis. Hi, Emily. You just identify yourself for the record.
Sure thing. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Emily Molden for the Nantucket Land Council. Nice to see you all again. I just wanted to also remind the board at the last public hearing, I recognize there's a lot of additional information coming in and in the works, but I had also raised some concerns around the stormwater management plan and the potential of incorporating some nitrogen removal and some additional rainwater calculations. So I just wanted to bring that up again, as I didn't necessarily hear the applicant mention it in their list. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
Just to confirm, we would have that information, plan to have that information at the next meeting for you. We share that concern. Want to make sure that it's properly mitigated. We also intend to present, hopefully at the next meeting, elevations from a new architect that has been engaged to get a Nantucket friendly design, and also to get you a landscaping and screening plan, hopefully that we could have in place for the next meeting. So those are the things that we see coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Welcome, Tucker.
Thank you, Tucker Holland, Housing Director. I just thought I would add to Stephen's remark. I'll say that we were encouraged, Brian Sullivan and I from the Affordable Housing Trust met with the developer and their representatives earlier today and reviewed a proposal that they have that needs a little bit of work, but they understand that. And we applaud the developers' intention of having this be restricted 100%, whether it's market or affordable, to year-rounders. And we are hopeful on, getting to something that we could favorably recommend from our perspective to the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, if there's nothing else from the public, and if you don't have any questions amongst yourselves, I would just ask for a continuance to the May meeting.
Board.
Motion to continue to
Yeah.
our May meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate the amount of work you guys have put in this time. It's helpful. Thanks.
And just for comment, if it seems like there's not a lot of comment here, is that we've had numerous meetings already, and a lot of these things have been discussed, and to taking Curtis's remarks to heart. That's one of the things that we've been working on for the last 3 or 4 meetings with reference to the parking, the tightness conditions, the amount, the traffic flow coming in and out, trucks, the turning radius of the trucks in the condensed area there. So we have noted it, or I am noting it now, just so that we're not just skipping over it.
Right.
It has been discussed and we will continue to discuss it. So we're addressing as many concerns as we possibly can. And each meeting, we're gathering a little bit more information. I think the next meeting will have some voids that are going to be filled in. So with that, there has been a motion to continue until the next meeting. And who was that? Nat, did you make that?
Very.
Barry.
And that
Yeah.
seconded, I think.
And Nat
Nobody
seconded.
Oh, I'll second.
Yeah.
Okay, motion made to continue by Barry, second by Dave. All those in favor? Aye, unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Moving on, I believe we're at Crib LLC, 12 Nobsca Way, and this will also have a A&R attached to it. Meg, is that Art representing?
Thank you, Mr. Good to go.
Almost. Meg, you say when.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you.
Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the applicant, Arthur Gasparo, Nantucket Engineering. I'm sure this looks familiar to you. We were before the board at your last meeting with an approval required subdivision for this lot. And we did that as the required step prior to coming in for this rear lot subdivision. And we've reconfigured the AR subdivision to eliminate the need for a roadway lot and to create three parcels. We believe it really in keeping with the intent of the rear lot subdivision bylaw. In using this layout, we are going to preserve the structures as they exist and really, for the most part, things as they are on the ground. The intent, as you may know, was for some housing for Toscana's senior employees at this property. And we would address parking layout as part of building permit and HDC applications related to, the development of the property, but ultimately the plan before you, we believe, meets all the requirements of the board for a rear lot subdivision. I'd be happy to address questions that you may have with about that.
Thank you. Board, any questions for Art?
I don't know.
Go ahead, Dave.
Are the plans for just one structure on this property, Art?
I don't know that it would be limited to how many structures would be proposed on the lot. I mean, perhaps it would be a duplex. I just don't know. I didn't discuss with them. But it would be certainly compliant with all requirements under zoning. I mean, no request for additional relief for property line setbacks or anything like that.
Thank you.
Barry.
Yeah, just through you to either Megan or Leslie, could you address Dobska and Essex Road and how that's kind of does or doesn't come together?
Well, Knopska Way is a private road.
Okay.
At least a portion of Essex has been taken for public easement, but it's still privately owned. They're currently not connected. There's, I believe, a fence or maybe a Jersey barrier,
There's a split rail.
a split rail fence,
Mhm.
separating the two.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board before I open it up? Okay, seeing none, I'll open it up to the general public. Okay,
Mr. Chairman, not seeing any hands raised, I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing then.
okay, motion is made to close. Is there a second?
Second.
Second's been made by Dave. Roll call. Excuse me, roll call. It's natural. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Whoop,
Nope,
that's
not
just the
quite.
close. Don't go anywhere. Now on to the merits. There are some findings and conditions.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the current plan that's before us at this point with conditions and findings as submitted through staff. And then we'll move to the A&R afterwards.
Okay, motion been made by Barry. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, unanimous. Now there's also the A and R.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion. We endorse the A&R as submitted now.
Second.
Okay, motion been made by Barry, seconded by Nat, the A and R. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Art. And now we're moving on to 30 North Beach Street LLC, the beachside, 30 North Beach Street. Meg?
Good afternoon,
Sarah.
Sarah Alger for the applicants. I think you should have received an amended operating plan and an amended site plan. Don Bracken is here with me, as is one of the principals, Brad Guidi, to answer any questions you might have. Two things I want to know, because they came in a letter from Mr. Wood this afternoon. The AC units that are shown on the plan are existing units, not proposed new units. If those are replaced, they'll obviously be quieter than the old units, but at the moment, those old units are just staying where they are. And the second thing is, on the landscape plan, the food truck was shown as obstructing the way, and that isn't the plan. The plan is to have the food trucks pull in on that lawn area behind the swimming pool, sort of near the bocce court, if you will. The changes to the operating plan were all in response to comments at the last meeting and also conversations that we've since had with the abutters. And I'm going to let Dawn walk you through what the plan changes are.
Thank you, Sarah.
Hi, Don Bracken, Bracken Engineering. We have received approval from the Conservation Commission. I'll kind of go over the plan in general. I wasn't here at the previous meetings, but the parking area has been changed significantly to put in angle parking in one-way loop. Basically, there was no formal drainage system except some subsurface drainage systems that have been kept in place, but we're adding newer treatment type systems also to compensate for any possible loss in flood storage with the reconstruction of the pool. We have the two entrances at the site. Both entrances you can see are being widened to allow for two-way traffic. Right now, originally the entrance to the right-hand side to the north, we had as one-way traffic, but we've changed that to two-way traffic, and then there'll be signage when you pass the perpendicular spaces to the building, where it will change to one-way traffic going around the site. We did review Ed Pecci's newer report. We did do a turning analysis for the fire apparatus around the site, which we submitted today, which shows, and it was designed in order to be able to accommodate a fire truck going through the site. There were some other, I think, minor comments from Mr. Pecci that we can easily address on the plans. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Don. Just a comment from the chair. I just, we did receive a letter today, and I'm not making an example or asking, that you bear the burden. This is just a general comment. There are, we are a board. We have paid staff, but in order to prepare for meetings, any last minute submission is difficult to review, whether it's 1 page or it's 50 pages. So, and I'm just making this as a statement. Anything that we can do to get it at least, the week before would be helpful, because I don't want to hold up any application, yours and anyone in the future, because we haven't had enough time to review. And there are things that, people as a volunteer board, we do work a good portion of the day, and with our early meeting at 4 o'clock, it's difficult to review things in its entirety. But I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound like I'm bitter. I'm just making the statement for everyone in the future.
I think, well, we got the final comments a few days ago, so I can't remember if the turning auto turn was in the original one or not.
Understood.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I understand. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, can I just add a clarification to that? So we filed a revised plan and our revised management plan on the filing deadline.
Mhm.
And then it went to the abutters again, and then we got a whole round of additional comments. So we were trying to be responsive to those, but I totally
Yeah, I
appreciate your
understand.
position. Absolutely.
When in control and you have the ability, obviously. I
absolutely.
expect that you would.
Completely agree.
Thank you. Board members?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Barry.
just 2 questions for you at this point. Are you doing any special events there, or is that just not within the purview of where you're going to be heading to?
I mean, we'd like the ability to do some special events, but that's not our focus.
Can you maybe be a little more descriptive,
Do you want to be more descriptive about?
please?
Sure. I mean, there's no plan to do large special events there. I mean, if the option was on the table and someone wanted to tent in an area, we would like to be able to submit for that occasionally, but no, there's nothing in the plans to have an event space that would be specifically for that. It's a hotel.
All right. I just want to make sure I kind of get that on the record.
Sure.
Just so that we're clear on what the future holds
Yep.
in store. Second thing is, I don't know how, I'm gonna bring this up anyways. There are potential improvements that could happen in that area, and I don't know if there's any sense of wanting to contribute toward the town a little bit to help with those. Especially on the opposite side of the street where I can see, you know, the beginnings of a walkway system there as well too, especially given with some of the special events down at the jetties and stuff.
We're always open to things like that.
All right. Leslie, I hate to put you on the spot here. What would you suggest? Just, you hear where I'm tracking.
I do. I'm not aware of any specific projects that are proposed right now.
At the
so
moment,
it's-
but I'm looking more toward the future of what else can happen there. As Andrew has always like to say, there's a rational nexus to things, and sometimes this is the genesis of starting that. And
Right.
again, if nothing happens, I mean, the money goes straight back.
Well, I would say in this particular case, since there's not a specific project that
Yep.
we can link to this,
Yep.
it's hard to propose a number for something that may not actually happen.
Okay. All right, I guess staff is saying that you're off the hook.
For now.
Yeah, all right, but thank you though. I appreciate the thought.
Okay. Board members, anything else for open up? Great. Thank you, Brad. I'm going to open it up to the general public for comment. This is not the first meeting.
All right. Good points. For that. I was thinking the same thing. You know.
I guess go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I
Yes,
was
sir.
just conferring with Attorney Alger, who asked me if I was going to be in opposition of anything she was doing today. And I
identify
said,
yourself.
no, of
Wait.
course not. And while I was sitting here, got a text message from Glenn Wood. Megan would just like to confirm that you did receive something from Attorney Wood.
And while we're waiting, what could you identify yourself?
Oh,
for
I'm
the
sorry,
camera?
Whitney
Yes.
Gifford, subbing for Glenn Wood, representing one of the abutters.
Thank you.
Yes, I received an email from him at 3:30 today, which I forward as soon as I could to the board members.
And addressing your prior problem,
Thank you.
we apologize for the lateness. Unfortunately, Attorney Wood thought this was still going to be a Zoom presentation, which is why he's not here and I am. Attorney Alger did indeed discuss the noisy AC unit and the location of the food truck. So I'm sure that'll be the subject of further comments going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And just because there were comments, Emily Molden, if you would, do you have any concerns or questions with in respect to the drainage and the existing grades and such?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Emily Molden for the Nantucket Land Council. I believe at the last hearing, I had really just commented some appreciation that they had been incorporated more of a rain garden and some bioremediation areas into this plan. And I don't have any further comments. Thank
Just
you.
want to get your on the record. Thank you very much, Emily. Anyone else from the general public? Okay, board.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not hearing much of anything from the board, nor am I hearing anything additional from staff. Is that correct? Okay. So I'm making a motion at this point that we close the public hearing.
Okay, motion's been made to close by Barry, second by Nat. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And it is unanimous. Okay, pleasure of the board.
I'll make a motion at this point that we approve the 30 North Beach Street hotel project with the appropriate findings and conditions that have been submitted to the board today.
I'll
Okay.
second that.
All right, motion has been made by Barry, seconded by Joe.
And just let me chime in, just
Go ahead.
any of the smaller things can always be resolved with staff.
With staff
at-
as
at
previously
Reggie. Thanks for
discussed
that.
in the,
Exactly.
yeah,
Sorry.
the numerous meetings.
I apologize on that.
Okay. Yeah, and I only want to say that because after extensive meetings, 3, 4, we're looking at a general finding and a couple of conditions. And I just wanted to let everyone know there's been a lot more detail involved in the discussions and findings and comments that were made in respect to not only parking, but lighting, hours of operations and things like that as well. So I'll take that motion to approve by Barry with the findings and conditions, seconded by Joe. And I'll ask the board, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And it is unanimous. Thank you very much, and thank you for the patience. Moving on, I believe we are at 23 Broad Street, owner LLC, Brotherhood of Thieves, 23 Broad Street. Meg, representing,
Sarah Alger is here to represent the applicant.
welcome
Hi.
back.
Thank you, Sarah Alger for the applicant. So as you may recall, we went through a permitting process a few years ago. The restaurant's been open a full year, open year round downtown. And we are back to ask for 4 modifications to what was previously approved. Those are, first of all, I don't know why we did this, but we specifically mentioned who the manager was in our operating plan, and that's now changed. Jonas Baker's now the manager. In fact, Jonas is here, as is Jamie Strabino, to answer any questions that you might have as we go forward. Second, conditions 7 and 8 preclude any sort of music whatsoever on the patio. We would like the ability to have what I would call low-level background music on the patio during the time that the patio is open, from 11:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. It's 10 p.m. It's currently closing at 11. So we shut down the music an hour before close. That's consistent with other permitting in town, specifically the tavern, which is about 40 feet away, is from 11 in the morning to 10 at night out on their patio. I think it's basically the same exact permitting. Let me see. Their license is outdoors 11 to 10 p.m. and indoors they have live music from 11 a.m. to 1 a.m. So we are asking for that low-level background music outside from 11:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on condition 30, it currently says that all service outside has to be seated. Now, we're not looking to have like a bar with 80 people all crowded around, tavern style, but we would like the ability to do small events like the chamber after hours. The chamber came to us and asked if we could do an after hours out on the patio. And we couldn't because everyone has to be seated, which is the antithesis of what that kind of event is. You want people passing hors d'oeuvres and people standing and talking and moving around, not all in a cluster making a lot of noise, but generally kind of more circulating. Now, I don't know how you write that specifically, but that's our intent. And what we would like to be able to do. It's just very restrictive to have every single person sitting in a seat having their drink served to them. And then the fourth change is inside the building. Currently, live music stops at 10. We would like the ability to have live music upstairs until 11 and downstairs in the front, sort of in that area, you know, where Linda Worcester used to play, have, again, live music going there until 1. And again, that's consistent with other establishments in town, specifically right next door at the Jared and Tap Room. So those are the requests. I think Jonas might want to amplify just a little bit.
Jonas Baker, just speaking on behalf as a partner and general manager at Brotherhood. I think you guys might know me from 18 years of being at Slip 14 living here 30 years in the restaurant business as a respectable, hopefully respectable restaurant owner and manager and runner. So anyway, long and short of it is, I think what we're just trying to do here is achieve and do some cleanup for some things that have kind of gotten out there in the social media side. And once you know that we are respectable owners and operators, living here year round, providing for the community, doing events for, Children's House, for the chamber. And I think one of the limitations here is using that patio for events like a rehearsal dinner. We still would not exceed our occupancy, which is 80 people. So whether you have 80 people standing or sitting, it should still be about the same amount of noise, I would think. And the goal is not to have a bar. It's the ability to do events for small friends, do events for the chamber, all these things that kind of limit us in the fall to do. And that's the main goal is, and just be represented like anyone else who's in town, running the same operation that we are. And I think that the corporation is called Served Well Hospitality, and they're a restaurant group from off island. They approached me to be their partner in this, to kind of navigate and maintain the course here and do the right thing, living here around and being part of the community. So I think that's the main goal, is to show you guys that we can do it and be respectful to the neighbors and the town and abide by the rules as we have. So that's pretty much the long and short of it. If you guys have any questions, I know there's some things you want to ask, and more than happy to answer anything.
Thank you, Jonas. First thing that comes to mind, we had some letters that were written to us from the area residents. And I think the number 80, happy to see that that's not increasing. A couple of the concerns were who's to police that, because you had seating for 80, and if you're going to have takeout standing, how do you kind of know, or how do you police that there's not 100 people there standing? Because it could be a little confusing when everyone just hovered around. And
No, I understand. And as you know, 18 years of Slip 14, I helped do some of the how do I say it, occupancy levels that we've acquired and done and had to take care of. And part of that is maintaining it as an owner operator and being on site and knowing how many seats you have, how many people are in there, how many staff you have on board. And it first off comes down to who the owner or the operator is, and are they doing the right thing? And then secondly, it falls upon the fire department and the building inspector, and they do their normal checks. So you want to be in compliance. That's the goal, to not be in compliance. So that falls on me as the general manager, as my staff, to maintain that number. And when we're booking parties, Mrs. Johnson calls and she wants to do 100. Well, I'm sorry, we can't do 100. We can do 60 is a comfortable number, 70. We set that limitation.
thank you. Board?
Yeah, I mean, I had a problem with the application when it originally came in, the first application, and I have to admit that the job that they have done there is remarkable. I think that they give a very good product, very good service, and I think it is a bonus downtown. Our problem as a board is to find that balance between residential behind and commercial in the front. I think it swings both ways, that the residential needs to understand that they bought next to a commercial district, and the commercial district needs to understand that they need to respect the neighbors. So me personally, I'm a little concerned about the word events. But I also think with your music request, parity with the business next door is only fair. So and I am sure that you, Jonas, will make sure that the music is at a respectable level.
I think the goal was moving it from 10 o'clock, because we normally do 8 o'clock till 10 o'clock. So you have, everybody has an event here or there they're trying to schedule. So now they start at 8:30. You want to, if we say 10, it's a hard stop at 10. If we say 11, it gives us the grace. But the goal is to be 8 till 10 and then have everybody done. But that gives us the buffer zone. So if you guys come, or anybody comes back and says, hey, you played till 11, we're like, well, actually we played till 10:30, then till they wrapped up, it was 11. And where I'm going with this is I'm a restaurant guy. I'm not a bar guy. That's where I'm at. And Serve Well Hospitality, I only joined this group because their main goal is affordable, year round, do the right thing. And I told them that when I got on board, we're open in the winter. It's not a huge moneymaker. I mean, if you look around who's open in the winter,
Right.
the goal is to stay open. So we're trying to provide that to the community, be a part of it. Our goal is not to go against anybody.
No,
It's to work with, I know, and I'm just stating that's where we're at. And I will do everything in my power, living here year round and telling you that I will follow the guidelines that are set. And whatever guidelines you guys come up with, we're just asking for a little flexibility in the summer to move these things, because that's part of what drives our, the money to keep us going through the winter.
and I think you guys have achieved that this year. I mean.
Thank you, appreciate that. Those guys did a great job, and that's the only
Yep.
reason I came on.
No,
Another point that was brought up, Jonas, was a letter that was sent in reference to the parking, the pickup, or actually the pickup in front,
Yeah.
the congregating of groups that are there, noise, et cetera.
And just to be clear, Serve Well Hospitality is its own entity. Cisco Brewers, AAA, we have some licensing with them. They are not a direct connect as far as financially or anything like that. And anything that was said like that, I represent Serve Well Hospitality. We do some things with Cisco, but anything that was quoted or in the papers or this or that, I want to clarify that. And that's not part of what we're looking to do. We're looking to run a restaurant.
No, I wasn't bringing up Cisco.
No, well,
I was
I
talking
am-
about the actual, the consideration for people outside.
congregating?
in the street, yeah.
I
And when you're
understand.
looking at, standing and grabbing something and then walking out and waiting for whether it's a taxi, a bus or something, and everybody forming there.
Oh, I understand. That's a problem we have at the Rosencrown when there's a line there. The juice bar is a prime example, goes all the way around the corner, Sunken Ship. I mean, we have to navigate these things and figure out what's the best way to do this. And our goal now, we have resi.com. So we're like, hey guys, why don't you take a walk around town? We'll call you when your reservation's ready. There's only so much you can do when we're dealing with 70,000 people, 60 restaurants. And that's kind of, we'll do everything in our power to help navigate that there's not a congregation there, but people are people.
Mhm. Barry?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, through you, just staff at this point, one thing that you had mentioned in the report was discussion about the first year in operation under the new ownership and what kind of impacts may have happened. Did you have anything for the board on that level?
No, we thought that was something the board may want to discuss. We did check into any noise complaints
Yeah,
that had been filed, and there were only 3, and they were 3 from the same person.
okay.
So, I think that says a lot about how well they operated throughout the season.
Wow.
The
Go.
same held true with zoning complaints. We did receive one. It was investigated by our zoning enforcement officer, and he determined that there was not any sort of zoning violation or violation of the terms of the special permit. So
And not to name any business in particular, but I'm going to, only because it relates to this particular instance. When we're comparing hours of operation, amplified music, time frames and things like that, there are similar requests from other businesses. I think the tap room has something similar, and I was curious if we have any information on any complaints from that particular service that they offer from neighbors, or that we might be able to anticipate with operation of this sort of magnitude.
So I can tell you, I am not aware of any zoning related complaints, but we did not reach out to police to see if the tap room has been subject to any noise related complaints. We only requested information regarding the Brotherhood.
Okay.
Amy
Joe?
Baxter's here. Maybe she could speak to that, the licensing agent for the town.
Great. Good call, Leslie. Thank you.
Excuse me, I was going to the gym. I'm a little underdressed, but so for tap
Well,
room, no,
excuse me, please identify yourself for the,
sorry,
yeah.
Amy Baxter, I'm the licensing administrator.
Thank you.
Just 2 things. No, we have not received any recent in the past few years on the tap room. And I have all the licenses here, and on that one specifically, I know you said tavern, but I think you meant tap room. Their
Yes.
patio streaming non-live music only on the patio until 10 p.m.
Mhm.
Indoors, it is live 11 a.m. to 1 a.m. Then on the other side, the Graydon House, they have patio dining, but there's no music allowed out there at all. It's interior only, non-live, and seated dining.
Right.
So,
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I was just concerned about music, outside. But knowing that Jonas is gonna be, the manager now, I'm more relaxed about that. But if, through you to Amy.
Sure.
If there is a change of manager, does that come back up to who is gonna be in charge of the Brotherhood? Because right now, Jonas has done a fantastic job, and I think
Yes.
they've really turned around.
We talked, because I saw the article out when he came as general manager, but I believe we still have the same liquor license manager, Jamie Shambino, who we have to, if we had to make a manager change, it would be with the liquor license.
Mhm.
But yeah, they're very, very responsive, and we've had great relationship with both, so.
And that would get reviewed by us and the select board again, right?
Correct. Anything that comes out of here would then go to the select board for a final license review.
Thank you.
And just to note, that's a great point, Joe, and kudos to you, Jonas, for previous businesses and things. But it's important to note that while you're presently listed as going to be the manager, things can happen in the future. So our decisions are going to be based on not just you taking over in the event that you retire or move or something. We'd have to make a decision based on a future manager, whoever it may be.
No, I totally understand. And I guess we just want to be recognized as a facility to what anyone directly with us, that we're all in the same playing field. That, and I understand there's certain points of view, but if you're in that location with that and everybody's, that we should all be equal. That's the only thing I guess that the main concern is, and that's me for 30 years down the road, that I'm just trying to represent.
Right. Board, Carl, yes.
Could you just be a little more specific about how you're going to police the walk up and stand up element outside on the patio? Would you have someone with a clicker on a podium checking how many people are coming to the event?
Well, normally
I'm
what
just a little nervous about the 80 figure.
Well, if you're doing an event, it's usually a per person event. So if it's your rehearsal dinner, your meet and greet, you have 60 guests. I get a guest list and we check them off. Or I go like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I'm like, guys, we're above occupancy. It's the same as you would do. We're talking about 60 people. It gets more than that with clickers when you're at 120, 130, or I have one floor plan that's as big as this room. So I can pretty much count everybody in the room just by standing here. So it's a visual. If I have 60 seats, I'm only allowed 20 people standing. If there's someone in every seat, there should only be 20 people standing. And that's kind of how we just evaluate it on a daily basis.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And I will note personally, I did go to the Brotherhood in the outdoor seating this past summer. I was turned away because the occupancy was filled. So whatever you're doing, I think it worked. I didn't get a seat.
Well, these guys, like I said, their main goal is to, drive the bus within the guidelines here. Hi, Sarah.
I just wanted to add, if I could, that we have the apartments now on the 3rd floor. I guess that's what we call that, whatever, 2nd floor, top floor. So we have an incentive to keep it quiet as well. I mean, it's not going to be going completely crazy because we have those 4 apartments where people will want to be sleeping. They're not crazy, and we're housing the employees somewhere else. So it's not employee housing. It's housing for people who sleep.
Mr. Chair. Yes, Steve.
I just wanted to suggest you guys might be easier to keep within the bounds of your mission and make the user experience more enjoyable. Audio spotlight, directional audio has come a long way in even the last 5 years. It might be something that, I'm not suggesting that we make it a condition, but you try and pilot it. You could use it in a couple different ways. You can enjoy the music at the table. It can actually be louder than it would be if it was just a speaker pumping out. Forgive me, but the technology is to pump out the sound. It's literally like a spotlight. The other thing is you may use it. It might be something you can set up for patrons who are leaving the restaurant, so you can direct them a little bit. If things are a little bit out of control, you can do it right from a little mic system inside. And it will literally, you could spot, depending on the technology you purchase, which is, not terribly expensive, you could spot and you could speak to a group in a line and no one else hears it. Like the Stephen Cohen wouldn't hear a thing.
As in Dave Iverson, get it under control.
Yeah.
Okay.
But just a suggestion on some tech that might help you.
Well, and everything I think this is the first move. And like I said, we're running a restaurant. We're not running a bar. We just want to have, Uh, 22 years. I say, what do you play in your restaurant? You play reggae. It's consistent. It's one beat doing, it keeps everybody in a groove. And that's what you want to do. Just maintain course.
Okay, seeing no other hands from the board, I'll open it up to the general public. Yes, hello, Curtis.
Curtis again. Here's what I see happening. I'm gonna walk up Broad Street with my dog. And I'm gonna see the entrance to the patio. And I'm gonna walk in with my dog and go to the bar and get a drink. And then I'm gonna turn around and walk out with my dog and go up Broad Street with that drink in my hand. Now tell me why that's not going to happen if this application is approved this way.
No, you're breaking the law. If police saw you, you'd be issued a summons because you're working with the.
There's no policeman there. Who's keeping me from getting the drink and walking out?
Well, that's the goal of the staff that we work for. We train them very hard, and it's like any other restaurant. You just usually don't walk out of a restaurant with a drink in your hand. And
But
if
you have a stand-up bar
No,
that
no,
I can walk up to and order a drink.
that's not what we're looking to do. We're
Well,
looking.
that's what the application says. So I encourage the board to pay a lot of attention to that particular problem.
I will say, and unless you're going to change the way you're doing business, when you walk in there, there is a fence that separates that walk-in stand-up seating area for the outdoor. And there's someone that takes reservations where I was turned away because the occupancy was, over the limit or actually at the limit. So if I were going to be walking out with a drink, I think I would have to go before that person. And I'm hoping that would be sort of policed, that you're not walking out.
I
with
think,
an
I believe
open
Curtis is
container.
right. It is in the wording of how it's worded. And I think that was the initial intent, was to write it that way so that you had to be seated in a seat to receive a drink. And I think that's where the wording came from, but
That's how Surfside was approved to get their outside drinking by the select board. So I'm just saying this seems to be broader and wider, and I'm concerned.
Very noted.
Thank
Yes, Dave.
Yeah, and I think that's a very valid point, but I think that we need to understand that liquor license is worth way more to the people that control it than letting a drink out the door. And I have faith that they've shown this year that they run a tight ship and they do a good job.
I've
So-
eaten dinner there 3 times in the last 2 weeks. I love it. I love it. I don't
Thank you,
like the
Curtis.
idea of an outside bar.
Thank you, Curtis. Noted. Hello, just state your name, please.
Hello, I'm Ann Davis. Our house is on both Ash Street and Ash Lane. It's right between the two, and it's just a few yards away from the back of the Brotherhood. There is a lot to like about the Brotherhood. The food is amazing. It's open year-round. It's welcoming to the community. It's reasonably priced and family-oriented. The request for stand-up food and beverage service represents to me a creep. It would bring the brewery vibe and onto the patio and actually right into the adjoining neighborhood. Adding stand-up service has been proposed as a means to satisfy local organizations, meet and greets. But at the very worst, with the stand-up drinking, hen parties, guys' weekends, hordes of festival goers and wedding attendees would jam in there for a taste of Nantucket. Is there any doubt that standing patrons are much louder and less well-behaved than seated ones? How could this not have a detrimental impact on the neighboring community? I'm going to now quote something from one of my neighbors. The Brotherhood has been ruthless with special permit after special permit to achieve their objectives without ever showing any thought or respect for their neighbors. This is actually quoted from a letter written way back in 2015. And unfortunately, the story hasn't changed. The 23 neighbors who signed today's letter, who wish some of them could be here today participating remotely, feel the same as this neighbor did back then. I have to compliment the planning board for over the years holding the line, creating smart and thoughtful restrictions that maintain the balance between the historic neighborhood and the commercial interests of Broad Street. Please listen to us and do it again with this application.
Thank you, Ann. Go ahead, Dave.
Through you to Jonas, are you removing all the seats from the patio? Once again, we're running a restaurant, a sit-down restaurant. But in the event we would have in the shoulder seasons, this is nothing we want to do in the summer.
So this is an option you're asking.
This
for,
is
not a.
It's more of our hands are extremely tied when you say no one can stand in that area. And I think that's what we're looking to do, is that if you want, the occupancy is 80 people. It'll never change. That's by the building code. So that's what we're looking to do. But if you wanted to have a, per se, meet and greet, a 2-hour, 6 o'clock till 8 o'clock before your wedding, we want to be able to have you walk around and mill around. That's the thing.
So basically every day it's going to be seated service, except for on occasion you may move or reduce the table to have some walk around.
Our business model works the best with tables and seats. If that makes any sense.
Nobody wants people bumping into it when they're eating.
Okay. And it's just, we're trying to just clarify that if something like this would, and this is not a gateway to open it up to be Cisco Brewers. That's not what we are. We're a restaurant, served well hospitality group.
Thank you. Yes. Hello.
Hi, I'm Roberta Saintmore. I live on Ash Lane. Members of the planning board, just a year ago, the select board chair, Jason Bridges, upon hearing this application with the very same applicants asking for the very same things, said, quote, "This is going to be watched very closely and listened to very closely from the neighbors. The applicant is on notice. There is no room for creep. I just don't think there is. Not that the neighbors should have to do that. The burden should not be on them, but I think everyone is going to be watching." Well, the burden was on us, the neighbors. We watched and listened, and I personally called and reported violations and concerns, as did many of my fellow neighbors. I emailed Amy and Megan and Marcus Stevenson, alerting them to violations. We contacted Jay Herman, who said, quote, "I don't have anything to do with the business. Talk to Jamie." I contacted Jamie, talked to him several times in person, text messages, going to the Brotherhood. Nothing got changed, nothing got fixed from our concerns. There also can be no dispute that the Brotherhood violated the restrictions placed on them just a year ago. I personally witnessed these violations and called 3 times. That was me. Although you're not categorizing why I called because the Brotherhood signed a contract with bands to play to midnight for live music. The bands told me this in person, verbally. I called to report this to the police. I videotaped it, and I also sent it to the police. These were not noise complaints. These were violations on their permits. These should not be tolerated, and as heck, it should not be rewarded. This kind of behavior that this board is okay with, that when this board sets down a law that a business owner feels as though they can do whatever they want, laws need to be enforced and respected. Please make them fix their fan and exhaust unit. That is constantly in violation of the island's decibel limits. Just this weekend, I recorded them at 62. Now that's only 2 decibel limits over the limit, but this is off season. Come summertime, it's going to be in the 70s. And as you can see from the letter that we wrote, I have all the evidence that it is constantly not at a violation of what you guys do. Again, the Brotherhood should not be rewarded for their brazen behavior and constant disregard of the special license that was granted to them by this board and every other board for the last 15 to 20 years. Every time the applicant, whether it's this applicant or the earlier applicant, came to you guys and asked for music on the patio, more people standing, every single board before you said, no, it is not in line because it abuts a neighborhood. It's very different than the tap room. I would just hope, again, that you find this not appropriate like every single other board before you has found. Please continue the restrictions that you've imposed on them today as last year. Please enforce the current restrictions because they're not. And finally, please truly consider the applicant's behavior in the last year. It was not a noise complaint. It was a clear violation of their special permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Jonas, while you're standing, do you know anything about those complaints or?
I'm going to turn this over to Jamie Strabino so that he can directly address the issues at hand.
Good evening.
Yes, good evening.
I think we're at evening now, right?
Just
Great.
Just your name, please.
Yeah, I'd like to address those because the,
Could you just state your name? for me?
Jamie Strabino. I actually live most of the year in the basement at the bookstore next door, but in regards to the hoods and the like, when we took over, we had the hoods worked on. In July, there was a complaint that it was loud. We went out and checked the meter. I actually have a decibel meter as well. And it came in at 70, so we had it repaired. It runs between 62 and 65. It's a hood, and you can't really make a hood run less. There was a complaint about smoke. I went and videotaped smoke coming from various other restaurants around the island because that's what happens when you run your hoods. The hoods are going to run the same level of noise now as they are in the summer because you have to run them all day long when you're cooking. Doesn't matter whether you're cooking for 100 people or whether you're cooking for 200 people, still need to run the hoods the same way. So I'm not sure whether 60 decibels, which on a meter says it's like a quiet household, is capable for a hood, to be honest with you, but we addressed it. We got it knocked down into the low 60s and addressed it at that point in time. In regards to a contract with the band later, I would love to see something in writing because we had no contracts with any band saying to play till midnight. We did have a few times where they played late. It was addressed, and I believe since the last question that was arisen about it, we haven't had any issues playing past 10 o'clock. We've had it locked down. So we're trying to comply and be as good a neighbor as we can be. We're also trying to operate a restaurant and trying to be able to do it 12 months a year so we can also benefit the town in addition to the business.
Thank you.
Yeah, this goes back to our balance, right?
Yeah.
Between commercial and residential interests. And it's a tough one, but I feel like we have some responsible owners, and I know that you guys don't necessarily feel that way all the time. They're also not asking for any increase in capacity here. Okay, they're asking to change how people attend a certain space, whether they're sitting or standing. And yes, a standing crowd might be a little louder than a sitting crowd, but as Jonas has said a number of times, is that is not the norm. The norm is going to be seated business. I just have a hard time. This is barely creep, and we see a lot of special permits in here that are definitely creep. This is minimal at best. And as far as the times and hours, they're asking for what a neighboring business has, and they might not exercise it, but they have it. And so for us to give one business hours of operation different than the one next door, and it's a similar business, I think is not fair. So, I mean, I welcome you to continue to bring forth complaints if they don't operate under the guidelines. I mean, I would like to see the official complaints made to the police department if it's possible, but I feel that just noise complaints 3 times is not really enough to stop such a small change in the way they operate. For me.
Could you please, we just need to have the mic register that.
I guess where I'm at is where's the accountability? Because you even just said it's a noise complaint. It was not a noise complaint. They signed a contract with a band. The band told us the contract. So I just don't understand, like when you say, sorry, just, they're admitting that the fan is not in decibel level and they're admitting that, oh yeah, they were playing, but they really were just packing up. They weren't. Where's the accountability? And when am I going to be able to come back here or come to Amy or come to anybody else and say, this is what they're doing? When every time I did bring it up and videotaped it and sent it to the police, you guys are saying, oh, it's just a noise complaint. It's not.
Well, Dave.
I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to
Yes.
have it back and forth here of appropriate manner.
I just want to say, we hear your concern. If there were 5 other people that had the same complaint and looked at a same contract in the midnight, you've addressed that. We've asked for a reason or an answer. We were giving that. It doesn't necessarily forgive them for doing that, and they have to have accountability. And if anything, this is going to be put on the record. Again, this is a special permit. We get to review this. And that's why we're having this discussion, and we're allowing you to make note of things so that it is on the record and we can look at, no, there weren't 0 complaints. And we appreciate that you are being very detailed in your I guess, observations.
Yeah.
However, we're looking at other businesses as well, operating the same business, the same hours of operation, the same outside seating, the capacities. And we're not seeing consistent from 10 neighbors. And we're not saying that you don't have a legitimate complaint. We understand that. And maybe your proximity is right behind them, where other neighbors that are 5 houses away don't have that same, not that we're belittling your complaint. And I think by stating on the record,
Right.
they have to be put on notice that, listen, you have a neighbor that you're
What do I do next time? Because obviously whatever I'm doing this year didn't work, right? I called the police. It's being labeled a noise complaint. What do I do when I say, hey, they're breaking their permit? They're breaking the rules.
So
Because
I guess that's something that we can't deal with as a board. You're not going to call us at midnight and
Of
say,
course
could you?
not.
I guess you're
But
you're
fair.
taking the appropriate action by calling the police. They're logging it in. Hopefully they're coming down and they're witnessing and filing a report that backs your statement saying they're playing until midnight. And we have witnesses, where they're in violation of their special permit. And then obviously we'd look at that and we'd say, 12 o'clock is not 10 o'clock. And amplified music is not low amplified music, it's live bands. Something like that is not what we're looking to approve. Where the applicant that you had stated from previous that we held was a totally different application. There were double the outdoor seating. There was live music outside. This is low amplified in a certain time frame. There's a restriction. They're not asking for an increase. So the statement that you had made from previous applications that we did not approve, by the way, we held firm, as you'd say, but we're looking at this being a modification where they're not looking for the increase in what they had previously applied for. So we have to look at it fairly too with other businesses.
Year, and every board said no. Every board
They
said it
didn't
wasn't
apply for
appropriate.
this.
Yeah, well,
Right?
They didn't apply for this.
Yeah.
What they're doing
Listen,
now.
I appreciate the back and forth and I appreciate you gave me a lot more time than you should have or could have. Jonas, nice to meet you. I live behind you. I will be meeting you all summer. Not sure it's going to help because it didn't help
Try
today.
food.
I do. I go there as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm very thankful that they're open during winter too. I mean, the only other restaurant open yesterday was Nautilus, right? But I'm just telling you that this is deeply, deeply disturbing. And I understand David's comment that we bought right behind a brotherhood. I get that. But there has to be some accountability. And I've raised my hand many times to say they violated it and it hasn't gone anywhere.
I personally,
Mr. Chairman.
I want to do
yes,
everything I can do.
sorry,
Oh, sorry.
Jonas.
Yeah,
So
that's
just
just-
through me, also through the chair, if you have a comment,
I'm
not
sorry.
directly to the person.
John.
Go ahead, Barry.
Thank you for doing that because there's a lot of back and forth dialogue now starting to occur at this point, which really everything should be going through the chair. I think I hear what you're saying, okay? And I can understand your frustration at this point. But it sounds like there's a disconnect between how much your neighbors are telling you and how much is being filed by the town. Now, when it gets filed by the town, a person like Amy takes care of that, and she's been raising her hand just as I've been wanting her to, because it's up to them to kind of make a final disposition about what happens with that. And so let me turn it over to you for a minute, because I think we're all kind of curious to hear that. And like I said, too, there is that kind of disconnect where I think your neighbors may be telling you one thing, but there's not always that follow through.
Yeah. Thank
But-
you. May. Okay.
Please, Amy.
And I
Thank
got
you.
this request today. Again, I apologize coming into this last minute to look up the reports, and I did. We had a report, I believe, July 5th, October 8th and 22nd, too, in October, as you mentioned. And we don't mean to disregard it by saying it's a noise complaint. That's an official categorization in our system. NOI. So I know that I pull through, there was motor vehicle crashes at that address, all sorts of other things. There were 3 things that categorized, and it did say live music. I'll have to go back and look at the time. But the disposition of those were the officers were sent all 3 times. And at the time the officer arrived from this location, there was no audible sound from the location where they spoke with the manager at the time. So, and again, and I know I saw the email earlier with zoning violations, which we don't get involved in, was to obviously allow for these folks to get up and running. It's a lot to get up and running in that first year. And so we had those conversations. So we did not determine that there was a direct violation in that respect. And I'll say too, the previous operators did play music out on that patio, whether it was allowed or not. I have videos of it for years. It kind of happened. So because of that, and with these complaints, they got a much stricter review of their license. They got much stricter conditions than had existed before because of that. So there has been accountability, unfortunately, from the previous operator to the new ones as far as what they're allowed to do. So it has been near constant communication with them. It's been great. And I apologize if it feels like it's not, but it's not always sometimes for them to determine if there was a direct violation. We have to be able to see that, experience that, and see that it's a constant problem. But, you know, we certainly are paying attention. So I'm going to go closer and have those reports available to you in full.
Thank you.
Okay.
And also, there is a management plan, and I think Roberta, you should be able to call the management, the person that's in charge at the time, and we'll make sure that you get that number. So the first complaint should be to them if it's 10 o'clock at 10:01. Not to the police at 12 o'clock. It should be right away. And if they don't address it, obviously that's the first of the second, and then the police get called and it gets a official filing. And I just have a feeling that by speaking today and bringing up the issues that you had in the past, you're going to get firsthand attention, especially from Jonas and the manager, to answer that call and have it addressed right away instead of 2 hours later.
John, speaking through you real quick.
Go ahead, Jonas.
So I am the most open, and I'm here for a long time, and I want to be here for a long time. So the goal is to work with everybody within the community. That's not the goal. And if anybody who knows me as an operator, they know that my number one goal is to do the right thing. So that being said, the fan thing, some things are out of control. I understand it is a fan. If we're running down the how many decibels are we running on a fan, then we need to hold Rosencrown, tap room, every single person, we need a noise, every decimal, everyone, and make sure everyone's compliant. And I understand we did as much as we can possibly do, and we will do that continually. But that's part of our operation in the MCD, is running a restaurant that has a hood fan in it. And I will do my best to do whatever I can do, and I'm open to talk about it. So that being said, anyone's welcome to reach out to me at the Brotherhood, reach out to me personally. And I'm speaking to you guys direct to the public. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, thank you. Dave, you had a
Yeah,
comment?
I just wanted to clarify that I don't want you to think that I'm discounting what you've said. I hear you guys loud and clear, but again, it's about finding that balance, at least for me.
Ma'am, you've been waiting patiently.
Public speaking is not my thing, so I'm going to read this. I'm Sue Lingaman. I live at 10 Ash Street. I'm here to plead the case for our concerned neighborhoods against the proposed Brotherhood changes. I really can't read it. I'm so upset. Okay, well, how does one count a moving target to control the numbers? My concern is the anticipated elevated decibel level that would inevitably waft into our neighborhood and eliminate the joy of being outside. I've been at 10 Ash Street since 1965, spending most of my time in the garden that I work feverishly to maintain. We all enjoy our yards and hope to continue to do so. I beg you to leave well enough alone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, the board. My name is John Pressman. I live on Ash Lane, and I'm one of the people who signed the letter, one of the letters that was sent to the board. There were 24 of us, 24 people who frankly, prior to last summer, had never met each other. We all came from different walks of life with different interests. But the prior application of the Brotherhood brought us together, and it brought us together to try to preserve what is left of our neighborhood in terms of the environment and the ability to peacefully enjoy our yards. And I think that Vice Chair Iverson, the word you use is the key word here, balance. And the job of this board is not enviable. It's a really tough job. I don't envy any of you because you're trying to do the right thing. You got a business here that's trying to serve the public, try to bring in some money and also feed people during the off season. And you got a bunch of people who've lived on this island and love it and just want to have some peace. And the question is, where do you strike that balance? And the answer I submit is not in granting the current application in total. And the reason we know that is because a similar application, if not identical, was filed last year. And this board reviewed it, and the select board reviewed it, and the HDC reviewed it. And we went through months and months of hearings. And the final conclusion that was arrived at was not some knee-jerk reaction where everybody just said, let's just give them this. It was a well thought out, reasoned decision. And it was one that allowed balance. It certainly wasn't what the neighbors wanted. Anybody who heard any of those hearings can tell you that. They wanted no music, no drinking, no nothing. And it certainly wasn't what the Brotherhood wanted, right? They wanted music and people standing. And so a whole bunch of men and women like yourselves who volunteer their time, work well beyond the hours they probably should, put in the time to come to a reasonable conclusion. And the question that's raised now is, do we throw that reasonable conclusion to the side after a period of less than 1 year? And I submit the answer to that question is no. You don't just take the work we did and say, 12 months have passed, let's come to a whole different decision, unless you can show there's some change in circumstances, or you can show some other elements that justify the change. And the one thing that's really lacking in the present application is a why. We know the what they want. We know how they're going to try to achieve it. But there's really no answer to why, apart from one reference to the need to have a Chamber of Commerce night that frankly is never even held during the summer season. And it's never held during the important time when people are wanting to sit out in a patio. So the rationale offered for the change is not one that really applies. So how do we get to that balance? I want to bring up 3 points. The first is the no demonstrated need that I just spoke of. There really is no need for this change. And what the board will be setting itself up for if it agrees to accept the application in total is that every year when somebody has an application like this denied, 11 months from now, we're all going to go through the same process, not just on this application, but all the others. I submit that a period of time, a trial period of more than 1 year is in order. Let's see how the new management does. Jonas was not the manager last year. I truly hope and feel based on what he said, he'll do a good job. That's certainly my desire. That's his desire. But let's see how it goes. The second, the failure to comply with past restrictions. Again, Jonas wasn't the manager last year. So hopefully this is a thing of the past. But that past was riddled with infractions of the very license that the select board granted. Now, this board has the power to look the other way on those infractions or hold them to the restrictions that were previously imposed. I submit that the response to an infraction, to a violation, is not to reward it by granting them additional rights, but to see if they can right the ship they're given, and allowing Jonas a year to get things under control, to make the adjustments the neighbors have asked for, to strike the balance that Vice Chair Iverson seeks, and I believe is the right thing to do. And then the third is really the subjectivity of the license. What is low-level background music? Background music, by definition, has to be some level above the crowd noise. Otherwise, it's no music. Well, last year, this board and the select board both said that the ceiling, the limit of the noise to be generated by the Brotherhood, was crowd noise. If this board is to grant the application presently before it, yesterday's ceiling will become tomorrow's basement, the floor, and above it will be the background music, with no standard set for what that is. That is a really dangerous step in what could be, may not be, but could be a very bad direction. You know, bad ideas do not get better simply with the passage of time. I submit to allow background music outside, to extend the hours of the live music inside, beyond, by the way, the time when the kitchen is actually cooking to make the food for this restaurant, by hours, would be a step in a bad direction. So let me propose, if I might, an adjustment that may strike that balance. Perhaps we allow the music to go to 11 o'clock, not on 2 floors simultaneously, but allow music till 11. Let's see if Jonas can keep that under control. And if it's really about playing till 10:30 and then wrapping up the amps and packaging up the musicians and the music, there shouldn't be an issue. On the outside patio, let's keep it right now as no music, which is exactly the direction the board and the select board took with respect to VMRA, which is the more recent application as composed to the tap room. You know, the idea that other businesses may have rights or have been given rights in the past doesn't mean we should repeat past mistakes. Let's see how this year goes. And finally, with respect to the standing, the answer to that is pretty simple. If somebody wants to have a wedding or rehearsal dinner, they get a special permit. They apply for that. But to have our police, our fire department, our men and women who are out there fighting fires and doing really important work, to make their tough jobs even tougher by asking they patrol the number of people at a restaurant and look after time of musicians playing, putting an awful lot of burden on our public servants beyond which they should have to bear. Let's strike that balance. Let's strike a compromise, not in granting the application in full, but if it is to be granted at all, in modifying it. And I would note simply as a final point, procedurally, the notice that went out said live music downstairs till 1 p.m., not 1 a.m. And so, unfortunately, if that is to be considered today, I think it would be premature because the proper notice had not been sent out. But I don't think we need to get there. If this board really wants to strike a balance, the balance is there to be struck. Let's give Jonas another year to see if he can bring things under control. And hopefully it brings us all together next year for a much more productive, if necessary, meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Barry?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few things. No matter what the final decision of the board is with this application, I'm going to ask the board to strongly consider that you set up another review period, same time next year, to see how things went. I think that is just a small but necessary obligation back to the neighborhood. I would tell you that with your neighbors, a lot of times we like to think we're going to be really good neighbors, just go kind of talk to someone to talk amongst ourselves. And the conversation for all the complaints kind of dies. No one wants to take that step about like, oh my God, I'm going to complain to the town. What's going to come of it? You're going to need, as a neighborhood, if this is truly the case, these are the facts that we depend upon to have to do that. It can't just be hearsay. It has to be solid. So I'm going to tell you, encourage your neighborhood to file the complaint with the town. That's what they're there for. The third thing is, one of the things I like about these applications, and I'll say it again, it's a special permit. If things really go south, you have the ability as a neighborhood. It takes no more than just about 10 people to file an application to the planning board to reopen the special permit so that things can be heard. That is always before you at this point. And that's one of the things I absolutely love about this. One thing I found kind of interesting, there was in our packet somewhere, was a separate thing, but the Board of Selectmen actually did grant them a license to play music till 1 o'clock in the morning. So even though they may have said one thing, something else happened in that process. But I just found that kind of interesting. You know, I will tell you, I've sat on multiple iterations of the Brotherhood, and I understand your concern, because I hate to say it, for lack of a better word, there is this little creep that begins to happen. We get to a certain stage, see how it goes. Oh, okay, let's make another change or expansion to the business, and so on. I don't necessarily discourage it, but I will tell you, as one member sitting on this board, the more iterations I see, the more they get the scrutiny as well to it.
Right.
And I think that's important. You know, so when I hear things like you saying the ventilation system and the smoke are being problematic again, if you haven't filed the complaint, then file it. Because we spent a considerable amount of time a few years ago getting that situation corrected through the planning board. And so when I hear things like it's just not working again, I take that real serious. But I need you to kind of, as members of the public, to help engage with us to make those things work. It's really important. So I'm just, it is a partnership. And I know it's not easy living next to a commercial site. There is give and take to everything. But if you have your rights as well too, and if they are being violated, you need to get it to a stage where that documentation is solid and taking place. Because that really is how we're going to have the teeth to begin to act on that situation. Conversely, we want to see our businesses succeed, and it's not lost to me either that we, as a town, we've continued to lose restaurants here. That's not a good sign. So there is that little bit of a catch-22 with things. But as I said before, at a minimum, I hope that in our closing at this point, the board will, at a minimum, entertain another 1-year review period to take place at roughly about the same time next year. So we can do it. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Barry. Joe?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm fine being here next year talking about it, but honestly, I don't want to. And so I'd like to have Jonas be proactive and, you know, address the noise of the events in any way possible, readdress it, look at it, bring a specialist down, whatever. I do know that that would be a huge concern if I was behind the restaurant hearing a fan running, you know, all the time. So I like that they looked at it and addressed it and brought down some of the decibels, but I would say don't wait for complaint. If Jonas and his group can step ahead and move forward, that would be great. And I agree with Dave with what he was saying. I think there's a balance, and I really don't have a problem with going from 60 seats to 20 standing. And I've witnessed Jonas do a lot of charity work and, you know, been present at it. I've witnessed it. I've been in the back of a kitchen working with him as his lackey. He really does try to go forward and do the right thing. And so I know that Jonas is going to do the right thing. And I would like to have a review and come forward. I don't think Jonas even wants to be here today. But I think next year, I think he'd like to come up with a positive recommendation, and Amy as well. You know, we know that you are there all the time and every Wednesday standing before the select board. So you don't want to be, you know, calling Jonas out in his group. So I really think that there's a lot of positive to this. And I think that coming forward and bringing any issues now so we can address them. And so before the season really gets into swing, people's windows start opening up, you know, the fans addressed, and I don't have a problem with music. I think what Mr. Welch brought up was a really good suggestion, and I think they'll do the right thing. So thank you.
Thank you. Amy.
Emily.
Emily, sorry.
So I was like,
Emily. Yeah.
thank you, Mr. Chair. Emily Molden for the Nantucket Land Council. I appreciate how much time you've already spent on this. And I'm not typically up here talking about noise. The Nantucket Land Council is a direct abutter at 6 Ash Lane. And while we didn't have any specific complaints about how things went this past year, I did, for the record, want to just express some concern about the extended hours of music and the additional music on the patio. I appreciate hearing about the license requirements for the tap room, because we have not had any specific concerns from the tap room either. I also appreciate Mr. Rector's suggestion about coming back in another year, and I'm glad that Jonas is on board, because I also have a lot of faith in his work around managing the restaurant, and I'll certainly let him know and the town know if anything arises on our behalf. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dave.
I would also encourage all the abutters, before they file a complaint, to call Jonas personally. I think that that's a better way to start whatever process if there's a problem. I see that frustrates you. Jonas is a different person, and I think that you guys need to approach this as a new relationship before you call it sour before it even starts. And I appreciate that you had some issues last year, but Jonas is a new manager. I have a lot of respect for Jonas, and I think that you will get a more robust response from Jonas than you have in the past.
Once again, the goal here is to work with everyone. It's not just about us. We are only sustained by everybody. So I'm wide open. I told you that. Anybody wants to call me, call me. I am a problem solver, and I don't like problems. So the coming back another year, that's perfect. I come back all the time, every year to be reviewed. That's what we do in the restaurant business. That's how we get a license next year. So I'm wide open to that. I think it's a great idea. As far as I think the 1 a.m. came from, there used to be a guy who played in the Brotherhood acoustic guitar downstairs. So it was more like, okay, if we ever thought about continuing, I have no problem. If you want to pull that out, I'm not looking to shoot fireworks off here. I'm just looking to do the most minimal, basic thing that we can do. And if there is an event in the shoulder season, my goal is not to have 4th of July, 80 people standing on the patio with music going. If anyone knows, we're running a restaurant. It's a sit-down seated restaurant. That's the goal.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Stephen.
May I? I just suggest it might be beneficial to all parties to, as opposed to, or in addition to having a phone number for Jonas, there should be an email address. It eliminates potentials for hearsay, and it simplifies the process. It's documented. If there's a complaint, it goes in. You have an ability, or somebody in your office, in your operation, has the ability to respond. And I think that it can help document and clarify, and it will also serve to provide the neighbors with the important perception of accountability, because there is that kind of a backstop, which is a printout of the communication. So I think it could be beneficial.
Stephen, I think it's amazing.
It's a good
Thank you.
idea. Steve, you're the first.
Amy, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I wanted to add to that and say that We've had it on our plate to create a more official process for those to make comments about licenses. We have 102 liquor licenses and there's like 2 of us. So my email fills up daily at this point. So we are doing that once we get through this season of applications. So we're going to provide that. I'll provide that to you directly. I know I have your contact information so that I have a better idea of what's going on and not waiting till it becomes a noise complaint or some other complaint through our dispatch. So we're definitely committed to doing that to make it easier and keep track of that as well, so that we'd have better reporting for you on that as well. And I will say that Jonas is probably one of the most detailed, responsive people that I deal with in all the liquor licenses. I push send on an email and he's already on the phone calling me. So I do have faith in that as well. So
Thank you.
okay.
So Chair, I just want to
Go ahead.
kind of close this a little bit. So I'm sort of speaking to you folks there because that's the
neighborhood
focus. You know, there was a fire at the Brotherhood in 2004. Okay. And I sat here as an alternate. It was actually at the school meetings or at the high school. And it was contentious. And that's the same special permit, just so you know, it's 2004. That we're continuously, that's what the process is supposed to be. Okay. This restaurant was closed for a year. When the owners were, and when there was all the word about them selling and different things were going on, with all the new changes, I'm speaking to downtown now. I'm not talking about just the Brotherhood. I'm talking about just the whole restaurant issue and changes that have been made with local ownership vanishing because of the value. You get 14 investors for this place and 10 over here, and it's like a different world now. When Cisco got involved in this, I thought this was going to be great. I said, oh, perfect. It's not X or Y. The people, we don't have any idea who they are. They're just a name. But these people, we can put a name to because we know who they are. So what you have to understand, and I think, you know, you're new here, okay? This is Broad Street, Nantucket. This isn't Center Street, Sconset, okay? We've been going through a lot of difficult applications with COVID, the new, you know, with Zoom, with people being able to attend meetings in January that were never able to do that. The situation with the wood box. I didn't think that was going to happen either. I think with that guy standing right there, I've known him since he got here. Okay. That's the best thing you've ever had right there. Okay. Because it's not a person from outer space that you've never heard of. Okay. So last summer was kind of a reset for the Brotherhood. It was like new, old, right? You had different people, different style of business. Nobody knew they were going to be open 7 days a week in January. But that got around the island real fast. That, wow, they're open. Like somebody is open in town besides Stubby's. That's sort of what we say when we're from here. We say, other than Stubby's, what's open. So let's let this process happen. Okay. Like Barry said, the special permit is sort of like, it's sort of like an ankle bracelet. Okay. Like there's always an ankle bracelet for a restaurant or any kind of business that has a special permit because there's that way to get them. Okay. Amy being at our meeting, which is rare to happen. That's nice to have her here for this because she is part of all of this stuff. It's all an integral part of the town and how it operates. So let's work with Jonas. Let's let the Brotherhood sort of come back to life in its new form for the 2020s. Okay. And I think that's what we all sort of want. Okay. So I urge you to work with Jonas because when I found out he was going in there, whatever that was 2-3 months ago, I was like, oh my God, this is perfect now. We're all set. So thank you very much.
Anyone else from the general public wish to speak? Seeing none, board?
I may be the motion maker, but I'm not the rainmaker.
Can I ask,
Go ahead, Dave.
Jonas, real quick, I'm sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, what are the hours of service, food service? And I know I should know that, it's right in the.
So
agreement.
11:30 a.m. and we're hoping to actually in the summer open a little earlier just because there are so many people that are looking to eat. So it might be 11, but we do 11:30 till 10 p.m. Our last seat is 10 o'clock. But that's the main goal is that we see them at 10 and they're done by 11 because you just have those stragglers who couldn't get in at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. So they have to go at 9, 10.
That's inside and out.
On the patio, yeah, but the patio right now has to be cleared at 11. We're not looking to extend that at
No,
all.
I realize,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around
Yeah.
the music hours, really.
The music can stop on the patio at 10. It's just background music. And upstairs right now, it is until 10. And what we're saying is so that we don't have this, you were supposed to be done at 10 and it's 10:15. We want to just have some sort of play. We're not looking to play to 11. That's the whole thing. But we just don't, we want to have a safety zone of like, all right, if they did play late for 15, 20 minutes because they were stuck in traffic till 8. The goal is like 8 o'clock till 10 o'clock for music upstairs. Like I said, the downstairs we wanted to do till 1. If you guys want to take that out and let us go a whole nother year, take it out. What we're doing is we're trying to put a buffer zone in so that if there is some complaint or someone has a concern at 10:15 because the music's there, well, this is why they're playing, because they showed up at 8:30. We're trying to give our guests till 10:30.
And food service ends at 10.
The food service ends at 10. So in theory, we're,
I mean, I would.
if you seat at 9:59, we will feed you at 9:59.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you would be comfortable if we said music till 11 downstairs?
You can take it out downstairs. If you want to do a whole year, we're talking about where we specifically do music. We thought it might be fun to have a guy play acoustic downstairs on a Thursday, one guy with a guitar like he used to do at the Brotherhood. And it's fine. Take it out. No problem at all. And if you want to do we should come back and revisit this a year and say, hey, you guys did a great job. Really nice.
Yeah, I mean, I just, for me, I think that if you're serving food till 10, I think music till 11 is reasonable. And I mean, I think the fear is the noise really happens when the music stops, right? Like if you're serving till 11, you're serving alcohol till 11 and they play till 11 and all of a sudden the music stops, then you know, it spills out with people that have been drinking.
There's plenty of other places that
Oh,
live
no,
music past. That's what I'm saying. We don't
I
want to
know
be that. We want to just,
But
that's what
I'm
I'm saying.
just trying to, again, try to find some places where we could simplify this a little bit. So.
As much as I don't want to say is, please hold me accountable.
You know, we will.
I don't want to say it, but
Yeah.
that's what's going to happen anyway. So hold me accountable.
Yep. And again, just to confirm that you're 90% of the time is going to be seated service at the patio.
We're talking about June through August, the goal is to have people in a seat having a meal.
Okay.
What we're saying is if per se in September after Labor Day, somebody wants to do a 60-person meet and greet, that's actually less people than 80. We just want to have the flexibility as a revenue center too, also to provide so we can get some money to stay open through the winter. I mean, we are running a business. That's the other thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just some random notes that I've been taking, just trying to hear everyone and a couple of key words from everyone. There's been discussion about accountability, also trial period, balancing compromise, and hearing from the neighbors, hearing from the business, trying to find that fine balance. I think we're trying to work together and looking at, innocent until proven guilty. We do have a time trial period for somebody that does have a proven track record. So we are going to have a trial period of reviewing this again in detail 1 year from now. It's a special permit. So we're giving a little bit of benefit of the doubt because it's not a new applicant that just started a business yesterday. It's somebody with the previous establishment that we haven't had complaints about that runs a very successful, accountable business. And I think with communication, supplying an email that Stephen had suggested, and also a manager, cell phone, something that you can call right away instead of a couple hours later, then they can address it immediately. These are the balances that we're trying to work together as a board to address the neighbors' concerns and also keep a viable business open year round that helps our community that from people that are here all year round. So I just wanted to just note that we hear everybody and we're not going to please all the people all the time. Maybe not even some of the people some of the time, but we're trying our best to find a balance as everyone is talking about. And I think we're pretty comfortable of the discussions that we had, and we're hoping that we can come to a balance with everyone. So I don't know if I'm just going in circles, but we're trying, and we appreciate. We're hoping that this year will have a better effect on how you view the Brotherhood.
Yeah.
If they run this and they run this really as we expect them to, and they are being held accountable, all your questions and comments and things that you're addressing today will have bore the fruit that you hoped. So we do appreciate your coming here and being heard. We just hope that the applicant hears that, and we think they do. So,
Mr. Chair,
yes, Steve,
could I just get a couple of clarifications to maybe close this out?
Mhm.
Please, is that okay?
please.
So, if I may, Jonas, patio, you're basically looking up stand-up events versus walk-in patrons.
Yeah, you won't be able to just walk in and get a beer at the bar.
Okay, so
It's-
that's one.
Yeah,
That-
it's if you're in the facility right now, it reads that
Yeah.
you have to be seated to get anything.
Okay, I'll take that at face value. Upstairs music, downstairs acoustic music, no later than 11.
Yeah, totally fine with that.
Management email and a red phone, your cell phone.
That's a hot phone. They call them burner phones these days.
Vent DB levels you'll monitor.
Yeah, I mean, there's no
and,
TV outside. Everything's internal.
All right, and see you in a year.
That's perfect.
Barry?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Lowell was looking at me, waiting for me to make a motion. And I've now,
Steve just did it.
well, yeah, but it's gonna be up to one of the five of us to make that motion.
I know,
Just
But
trying to do my.
But let me take a minute here. Why didn't I do that? Because I haven't made up my mind yet. I have not made up my mind yet on this application. Because there's a lot of parameters to weigh. Through you to either Megan or Leslie or even Sarah knows, what modification number is this for the?
Since 04.
It's modification number
7.
It
7
would be number 7.
Modification number
It's not
7
bad.
in 20 years.
in
That's
about
not
20
bad.
years.
Yeah.
It's not bad, but it certainly is more than what we see from a lot of other applicants who come before us at this point. And part of what doesn't fail me is that there are similarities between the last modification that was asked for and the modification that we're dealing with today. So I have to agree with the neighbors a little bit. There is that advancement for things, but times change, things change as well too. And every time brings a slightly different nuance to it. But that's why I was saying to you earlier, it's not lost on me that as we go through more modifications, at least in this boy's eyes, the higher the scrutiny. Because I always want to look back and see where do we come from and what was being advanced at those times. So I like the idea that we're going to do a 1-year review. What I might take a little further with you is if you want to do live music downstairs to 11, great, maybe during the summertime. But as we get out of the summer mode, maybe switch it down to 10. You know, streets get quieter, things get quieter out there, and just being maybe a little bit more respectful of the neighborhood. That's all. And let's see how that begins to flow. But I have to just say to the people who live out in that area, I get you, I hear you. You're just going to need to step up to I know no one wants to do it. Believe me, I like to be the silent person as well too. But there are times where you have to do it for your own peace of mind, so it doesn't get overblown or out of place at this point. there are mechanisms for you to do it. So I encourage you, please avail yourself of that. Thanks for listening.
Board,
I'll make a motion.
go ahead, Dave.
So I'd like to make a motion to allow.
Oh,
Did
wanna
we have
close
to
the
close
public
the
hearing?
public
We have to close, I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion made to close by Dave, second by Nat. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Go ahead, Dave.
Like to make a motion to allow them to have low-level background music on the patio till 10. Inside till 11. Is manager cell phone in the management agreement? So I don't have to add that.
Add an email.
Okay, so and add an email. Add a manager email. And that's it.
Well, of the following conditions,
Oh, the following.
the 80 shall remain the same.
Yep, 80 remain the same. They're allowed to have stand-up with the they're allowed to have stand-up with the understanding that that is not the primary use of that patio. That's it.
And the annual review next April.
Annual review, next
2024,
April,
1 year.
24.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Jim.
I'd like him to just look at that event again, some way, shape or form.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important piece. I
Would
know it's
you-
not, if that's something verbal they could give us, but I'd really like that to be reviewed.
Continue continue to work. on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just bring us sound.
There is an answer.
Ongoing monitoring of the decibel levels of the
Yeah.
event.
Yeah.
And then if we can bring it down further, let's do
Yeah.
that. Let's really try and work on it. I mean, I think that's,
Continue monitor the
Yeah.
the decimals. Yep.
And this chair through you was part of that motion to go to with the downstairs music was to go to 11 during the summer and
Yep.
10. Yeah,
You mean 11 during the winter?
We could do I could make it 11 till September 1st and then, or till October 1st and then 10
there you go.
from there on.
Yeah.
Okay,
does it start?
good question.
Is it June 15th?
You want to be consistent and go to 11:30 in the morning?
Oh,
Or do you want to?
he meant the date.
No, the time.
Date. Oh, sorry. I'm so
In
sorry.
June, what,
June.
15th, 1st, 15th?
June 1.
June 1. That's
Yep.
that's clean.
Keep going.
June 1.
You get all that, Megan?
Uh,
My babbling?
And we're on tape too. Okay. That's Dave's motion. Is there a second?
second that.
Nat got you.
No, it's okay.
Motion's been made by Dave, seconded by Nat. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you. And thank you to the neighbors that came out to comment. Cross your fingers.
No, no, don't cross your fingers.
Jonas will be responsive.
There
I
you go.
promise.
Amen.
That's
Yep.
that's what we like to hear.
Moving on, we are looking at 40 Old South Road LLC, 40 Old South Road. Meg? Let's see.
Art
Continue.
Casparo is here to represent the applicant.
Art, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the applicant, Gasparo, Nantucket Engineering, we're before you tonight for the second public hearing for this new project located at 40 Old South Road, right on the corner with Forest Ave. The board had some questions at the first hearing. I've provided a revised plan and some supplemental information. So they take a couple of minutes to run through those if I could. First foremost, I would like to clarify that the project is not a relocation of the existing Thai house, but is in fact a new operation by the same owners. And I know that was clear at the last meeting. You asked about the hours of operation, and it was proposed would be from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. They're hopeful to be able to do breakfast through dinner in terms of takeout. Was questions regarding what would be sold in the retail portion of the store of the facility, if you will. And they'll be limited to pre-made packaged food and grocery type items. They're not looking to be a convenience store or to have, convenient type, toiletries, anything like that. It's strictly food, related and primarily for the, prepackaged food that they would make to supplement the takeout operation. So if you're getting takeout and there's something else that you'd like to get to go along with that, drinks and such. The parking was I think a big part of the discussion, and we have requested 5 waivers on for parking spaces. What the applicant agrees to would be a restriction that the apartments that are included above the store would be restricted to employees only. And further, that those employees would not be allowed to have vehicles on site. So essentially that we believe equal the parking demand by the bylaw generated is 5 spaces. So while technically I think we still need that waiver, I believe it's justified in that those 5 spaces, the demand won't in fact be there. I think that further, such an arrangement with employee housing to a business directly above it is completely in keeping with the intent of the bylaw and sort of harmonious development for having people that are on site and reducing vehicle trips and that sort of thing. The applicant does agree to NERDA passes as well for all of the employees. There's also bicycle racks that are shown on the site plan and been provided. We have requested a certificate of water quality from Comet. I believe that Mr. Willett is working on that review, and we certainly would agree to a condition that there wouldn't be a release of the final decision or certainly not a certificate of occupancy, whichever you prefer. With prior to receiving that certificate of water quality, we're comfortable that we can obtain that. We also, I think I would like to very much thank Mr. Rector for the suggestion, revise the plan to include the small connector directly from the bike path to the sidewalk in front of the facility. I think it makes a lot of sense instead of having folks have to go up Forest Ave and into the driveway. They actually can just cut right in and out from the bike path. I think that's a real win-win, if you will. And the applicant agrees to the monetary contribution to the town infrastructure in the area, certainly. And the other piece that I wanted to address just while we are here is the development proposed on the abutting property, because those questions had come up. You notice that there was in fact for tonight's hearing another application filed for that property. We've continued that application. It's a separate owner completely. While I represent both, there's no they're separate ownership and separate people completely. And that project is being revamped a bit to reduce the need for parking waivers on that site. So we would propose that the 2 projects can proceed on a standalone basis. And if at some point in the future, they were able to, have some mutually beneficial agreement to connect the lots, then that could work. But at this point, we'd leave a fence between them and the projects would remain standalone with their own entrances and exits, as well as, being judged or reviewed by the board on their own merits. We've proposed the screening and keeping the trees, meeting the open space. So I believe that we have addressed the questions that you had at the first hearing, though we're certainly happy to try to address any outstanding questions and concerns that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Art. I guess the first thing that I have is, speaking of the other applicant, even though I know this is based on its own merits and you're going to be submitting this and we're going to be looking for a decision on this proposal and the plan, the parking plan, landscaping plan, et cetera. Do you have any sense as to when the next adjoining lot, the urgency? And I only ask because when we look at parking and we look at the entrance, and then we look at maybe, working together with the next applicant to have maybe a one-way coming in and a one-way going out, the location of the entrance on this particular one may change a little bit. And in order to maybe foresee saving money for the applicants and also making it safe for coming in and going out in cooperation. Do you have any sense of when that might happen so we can kind of think of it together, even though we are going to base it on its individual merits?
Yes, I expect that we'll be in front of you at your next meeting with the other application. But if I could take a minute to address the comments with respect to the entrance and exits, I don't think they're likely to change. And one of the main reasons is for the loading and the way the building is configured, that the loading zone is the loading area and how they would access the building is directly adjacent from the entrance and exit at the facility that you're reviewing. So I think, and we've spaced the entrance to the other facility as farther away on the other property line again as this. So I think in keeping from also sound traffic safety considerations, that the only way you would move this one would be closer to Old South Road, which we don't think is particularly the best arrangement. So I think even if you were to review them together, the driveway entrance exits would remain the same. I would say the only thing that might be able to be changed would be a narrowing. They would remain in the same location. But again, considering the amount of traffic that or the vehicle trips as well as the loading deliveries, I think that having an entrance and exit that would be slightly wider would only be beneficial to allowing vehicles again to keep their turning movements tight and into the lane that they're exiting into. So this is my long way of, I think, saying that yes, we've thought about it. And I don't think that even if it was to be a one-way in and one-way out, the entrances and exits would probably stay in the same location.
So in also speaking of sharing maybe a common space or working together, you mentioned a loading zone, and maybe I'm wrong, but a loading zone 34 by 17 or something. So is there any consideration with the shared loading zone to enable parking that would normally be eliminated because you have two separate loading zones for a facility that's so close? Maybe having it designed, since there aren't any buildings on the sites already, to incorporate that plan to have a shared loading zone, maybe in the middle, where you can actually reap the benefit of extra parking.
I think that is a possibility, and that's one of the reasons that the loading for this facility is shown right along the property line and right behind there. So at this point, and the loading zone is not one that completely conforms to your existing, requirement, which is not, the layout that used to be a requirement until the bylaw was changed. But we've provided a loading space, unloading area, which is behind the parking spaces. And the idea of how this would function would be that when they're going to get deliveries, they would, put cones or, not use those couple of that parking space that's right there, so that the combination of the area shown on the plan for the loading zone and deliveries essentially is 1/2 plus the parking area. So it's kind of a win-win as we see it in terms of maximizing available parking and providing understanding that the facility needs to get deliveries and how that would work. And it's also opposite of that entrance exit, again, to facilitate the movement of vehicles in and out of there. So could there at some point be a synergy between them where that particular maybe, but again, where there's no real way to force them, if you will. I think that the other site will have to also have some sort of similar accommodation. And, perhaps the demand might be there for the overall operations to actually have them both.
Thank you. Board members?
Yeah, just real quick.
Go ahead, Nat.
All right. Obviously, you've read the Holgate family letters, right?
Yes, sir.
I mean, I'm shocked to read these letters. Obviously, this land is commercial. This land's been sitting there ready for development. Reading them, you'd think there was never going to be any development. So the road isn't wide enough for on-street parking, which is typical, unfortunate situation that happens here. The sharing idea that came up at the last meeting, I mean, this is sort of like Sparks Ave all at the same time, but at different times. It's like, I'm sure that is is planned in some way to have some sort of an interconnecting piece at some point in the future. So I don't see this as a big problem because I don't think this place is gonna be like, it's not gonna be like fairgrounds, you know what I mean? I think this is gonna be a modest operation, especially since it's not a relocation. I think that will play a role in it as well, and the food that they're selling is not gonna be like a Cumbies or like something that's gonna attract everyone to go there and get stuff, like coffee and lunch and all the stuff that happens with Cumbies and, place like that, so. But we don't know that. This is like a brand new idea, so it's unfortunate to have to kind of guess how something's gonna work when you don't really know exactly how it's gonna work. So I think, who mentioned it? John mentioned it with the in and out thing that we talked about last meeting, just keeping that sort of where it can change. Where it, like, if it needs to change, it can without it being a big problem with the way that it's built, like the curbing and the things that are concreted in, you don't want to have to remove something. You know what I mean? Like if it ends up being has to change, you want it to be easy. So that's kind of like, I'm trying to imagine this thing. If there was something already next door now functioning, we wouldn't be talking about it the same way. That's my issue.
Mr. Chair.
I don't
may-
envy you, by the way.
Oh, Mr. Chair, may I?
Yes, Art, go ahead.
So I appreciate those comments, and specific to that is exactly why instead of having vegetative screening along that property line, we went with a board fence, understanding we need to meet your requirements for screening of a parking area,
Yeah.
but exactly that reason, a fence could easily be removed, and,
Yeah.
concrete in the holes and away you go.
Yeah.
No curb along there. And I think that while it seems okay, great, you have them all work together, you have separate ownership, but you're also gonna have separate demands generated. So it's not like the
All at
other
the same time.
site isn't gonna need its parking anyway as
Yeah.
well. So, but again, the entrance and exits, I think, are the main piece of things which we have considered. I think the placement of those would essentially stay the same. I think we would move this other. We could maybe shift it a little bit, but I wouldn't want to see it all the way down at the end closest to that rounding.
Right.
So.
That was the right thing. Last
And-
meeting.
And
like
the
you
next
said.
one is all the way at the other end, at the northerly end of the other two properties.
No, that makes the most sense. If you're trying to plan something that's nothing to go by,
And I don't want to go back to it, but if this wasn't at a corner, then a different situation. I think an exit that was all the way at the end of all your parking so that nobody's coming the other way. But we have to also, we can't look at it in a vacuum. We also have to take into account the location of the property in relation to Old South Road.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just a few things. First of all, Art, thanks for making that pedestrian easement happen. That's great. I hear what Mr. Lowell's saying, but you never know how a business is going to turn out. And we certainly have had smaller businesses like this become very successful. And I'm a little concerned that parking lot is going to saturate. And the moment that parking lot saturates or it becomes unworkable, the next thing you're going to have is traffic filling onto Forest Ave or even worse onto Old South Road. And I can see that as a reality, because what's better than just pulling off onto Old South Road, running in, running back out in your car and making the straightaway again. That's it. So I have some concerns there. I want to think that this business will be successful, that it will do well. Two questions come to mind. We talked about the patios the last time, and I don't think we got a straightforward answer on those. What was the scoop with the final disposition on those patios? Were they meant for public use or were they private, or just help me out? Because it does change the dynamic here.
If I may.
Yeah.
It's you're referring to the fairly small, I'm
Yep.
looking at it, maybe like 8 by 16 patio along Old South Road there and
Yep.
and then the back one.
Yep.
I'll have to double check whether that would be available for somebody to, sit, or whether that was private. I think.
I
that it's-
believe we mentioned that, and that was for the employees or the residents in the apartments,
Well,
not
yeah, that-
necessarily
But
for retail.
realistically, I'd like that straightforward
Yeah.
answer, because right now I'm hearing a question mark
Yeah.
raised again. And I think that's important
Go ahead,
because,
Joe, you. Oh,
and
sorry.
I haven't really
Yeah.
finished.
No, it's a legitimate question. Sure, go ahead.
So I think that needs to be, that little thing needs to be sewn up, because all of a sudden, if people are using the patio, they're gonna be there for a quicker time than just the takeout. I'll wait till he's done.
Barry, if you look at the plans, the
Yep.
only access to the patio is through the kitchen.
I
Just,
hear you loud
Yeah.
and clear, but I just really want to make sure that
It's clarified from the
that's
beginning.
that's taken care of in the decision.
Mhm.
That way, there's not a question that raises up later. Or a slight, people may say, oh, yeah, now, don't worry about it. And all of a sudden, there's a slight modification that occurs through the applicant on their own accord, and we're like, what just happened? So,
I could clarify if you would like.
Please,
I
yes.
would like to have the patio that somebody, if they were gonna get takeout, could stop for a minute and say, they certainly don't want the patio to be restricted to private only.
okay,
If there's some particular concern, but, I think it's kind of nice if someone was to get a takeout, of some sort, but, the idea would be that it would be sort of part of the operation, yes.
so here's where my concern now grows a little bit further at this point, because you could potentially, at a minimum, tie up between 2 to 3 parking spaces for a half an hour, especially on a day like today, where people are like, we're not rushing through lunch. We have our lunch period. What a great place to hang. But you're losing parking spaces to that, and that's a concern. Okay? If you want to do that, that's fine, but most importantly, the thing that I want to see on this application is the applicant granting an easement to the property next door. That's not even a question mark in my book. Because we're all about, on the planning board, we are about interconnectedness of roadway systems. That is one of our chief functions here, and to make sure traffic flows. Not saying that the easement has to be pulled or done, but I do see where there is that possibility that, depending upon what happens next door,
Okay.
what happens next door may make a determination by this board to trigger the ability to use that. So I don't know how the rest of my peers feel, but as one person sitting on this board, that's not a compromising issue. Thank you.
And if
Go
I
ahead.
may, Mr. Chairman, with respect to the stopping along Old South Road and running in, Old South Road is posted and restricted by the select board as no parking either side. So there would be people essentially having to pull over and park on that bike path, as well as, there would be the ability for enforcement already that does exist there. So I'm not saying it wouldn't happen, but it shouldn't happen, and there is the ability to, obviously react to that. And I just wanted to make that point, that it is a road that is currently no parking either side for the length of Old South Road. With respect to the easement, I'm not sure that we've, could commit at this point that of granting those kind of rights to another property. But
Just quickly, I just want to go back to, I realize that, but I think there's enough major roadway systems where we do see that people are willing to just pull off to the side just for convenience, just for that few short minutes, hoping nothing's going to happen. So there's the legal aspect of it, and then there's the practical aspect of it. And that's what concerns me more, is that practical aspect of how that'll be dealt with. Thank you.
And then I guess I finally would just, in one last point of the amount of parking, it was, we do have 12 spaces. It's a fairly, decent sized lot. for that kind of a turnover operation, and especially when you're not gonna have any employees in there, essentially shouldn't be any vehicles that are there that are not on turnover. So I just would like to point out that, you know, there's I think a fairly good sized lot for, it's not while someone might, if they were to, if you say, pause and enjoy the, something they grab, but there's no real, seating or component that's gonna keep, I think 12 vehicles there on a, more than a fairly short-term type of a basis. The idea is, it's turnover.
And
Go ahead, Barry.
just one last thing. Were there hours of operation? Because that's another factor.
Yeah, it's in the letter.
6 AM to 10 PM. That's in the conditions.
Thank you. I thought I had seen it.
And there's a
then I just-
contribution and by,
Yeah, I blanked out a little bit there for a second on that. Sorry about that.
I do understand, or I agree with Barry, parking, not so much worried. I know, Old South Roads is going to be that occasional person that just doesn't obey they'll park anywhere. They'll park in the middle of Old South Road. But I do worry about Forest Ave. And when we're looking at, giving, some relief as far as parking, you have to also consider there are 5 bedrooms above, which can accommodate 10 people, even coupled to a room. And then Nantucket, it's interesting. You would have 10 people living upstairs and 10 people have vehicles, and your 12 parking places instantly become crowded. Or they're parking on the street, or they're parking on Forest Ave. So when Barry's concerns with the exterior seating, how it kind of complicates it when he does mention people will get comfortable, they'll stay there. They might be there an hour, and then all of a sudden, those extra couple of parking places compounded with employees that have different hours of working, that really lends to people parking on Forest Ave. So just looking at that exterior seating for employees or tenants might be addressed as opposed to opening it up to patrons that are going to using those extra parking places.
I think something to that point that we could do would be to agree to sign and restrict no parking along Forest Ave along the frontage of this property. And we don't have control, it's a private road, but along the frontage where there's a sidewalk there, we certainly could condition that to, I think, sign that as no parking. So that would help.
Barry has that doubtful look on his.
That just keeps the honest people away.
Right. John?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
For the record, Attorney John Brescher representing the applicant. I think going to the question regarding a potential easement with the neighboring property, I think there may be willingness, but I don't know that we're in a position where we can just grant a blanket easement, considering we don't know what's going to be next door. And while I appreciate the idea that, yes, good planning requires interconnectedness, and this may be a mutually beneficial easement for both sides. In that case, I think there certainly would be willingness between the two owners. I don't know that we can just sort of obligate the current owners to say, yes, we'll definitely grant an easement when we have no idea what's going in next door. I mean, again, I think the willingness is there if it makes sense and is logical, but we certainly can't commit to just, yes, absolutely, we'll grant an easement if it doesn't make sense.
You're breathing or, oh, yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can we go to the site plan that shows the adjacent building that's been HTC approved in the parking?
America's plan.
Yeah, it's labeled G11. And can we zoom in on the site plan? So guys, I bring this up not to put you on the spot, but I mean, it's in the planning board submission, and it's kind of a carrot with respect to potential parking and we talk about shared parking and different things. So to your benefit, depending on the use of the other buildings, which I understand may be office space, there will be parking spaces available in the other locations if it is pursued as laid out in the evening. So that could be an argument in your favor. But it's also, I think, an argument in the favor of the planning board that the easement needs to be resolved to move forward, because this is presented as conjoined parking. If it does come to fruition, you could also perhaps look at gaining a parking space on each of the further two lots by creating one-way in and a one-way out. I understand on lot 41, it would create a two-way scenario here, where, for instance, this was an in and this was an out. People would have to come in and park and they could go either way, but then they would go up here. But that would gain you two spaces. I understand you can't speak to that in full at this point, but I do think that this matter should be resolved as part of this application. Thank you.
And I would refer to Leslie. We can do that as we've done in different subdivisions and things like that with potential future access. Can we identify that particular area for this decision?
I mean, I think the issue with this is that these aren't under common ownership and control. So
Right.
you can't really put those types of conditions in like you could with a subdivision where it's a single.
But for
Developer.
future consideration, we're not requiring them to do anything now. Under this, initial application on its own merit, we're not going to be changing or granting or doing anything. But on the condition that the next property gets developed in the same light that of operation as this is, can we put a condition on there to open it up?
You could definitely put language in the decision.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Yeah,
About
I'm not,
them working together in the future, but I can't think of a situation where you have put language in a decision where abutting property owners have to share access when they're not coming in at the same time, working together on a common plan.
yeah. And again, I'm wrong in using this as an example, but we did this with Richmond Group with Clay Street. We've done this with Mayflower for future access, and then we closed it off. But we had the ability, if we wanted to open it up for future use. And that's what I'm kind of looking in this. If we're not requiring them to do anything right now,
Right.
but under a future application, if it is in the best interest, just as we're doing with Sparks Ave, we're having three neighbors, which is similar to this, work together, and we're not, if it was based on one applicant, we weren't going to require them to do it, but once it affected two or three, we asked that they be flexible and put something on there to allow us to open it up if we see the need for it.
I just have a concern with you all putting a condition in requiring them to work with the future owner that they don't know what the future owner is going to do. I mean, with subdivisions, it's residential subdivision to residential subdivision, and those are all consistent uses. This is something that we don't know.
Right.
And, at some future time, if it was really important, the town could take an easement and open it up. That's always an option.
Yeah, and another concern with that is, you guys are asking for a waiver of 5 parking spaces, correct?
Mhm.
And then if we have the neighboring businesses asking for no waivers of parking requests, that adds to a confusing situation, right? Because they're within the bounds and we've given a waiver for someone else, and so is overflow parking going to end up in their spot that they need. So I want to see interconnectivity. I think it's 100% important. I just don't know how we figure this out in this decision alone.
Well, you were saying, Art, that you're expecting the application to be submitted in the next meeting?
Yes, we already submitted an application, but it's
Yeah.
being revised.
And then we
in
continue,
terms
and
of,
I guess my point would be, not to interrupt, but if you are putting that in for the next meeting, maybe we can wait for next meeting to see the use and the operation and what they're doing, as opposed to just a landscaping company where you don't want to have interconnected traffic. But if we see the application and we see that it is of similar retail and use, then we can maybe incorporate the easement. Just looking ahead for a month. to
I
continue.
understand. If that's where we end up, but I would say that, we're trying to, essentially, especially with the restriction that we placed on the apartments, have this property stand as if it was being reviewed on its own merits. And the fact that, the amount of spaces waived are equivalent to those under the demand of the apartments, the hope would be in terms of, that's why, and back to the fence and letting it be a way that it could hopefully work itself out, but to have it as a requirement, I think would be challenging. And
But
so,
do you see how by working kind of together in the short term, not a year, not 2 years, in a short term of a month, what we're trying to do is be proactive so that we don't come back with an application and we wonder in 10 years, why the hell did the planning board approve this? It's ridiculous. They've granted the 5 parking places relief when they have a building that's separate and they have a problem with traffic. And when we can, as Stephen said, with the in and out, we could potentially pick up 2 parking places. And I don't think it's unreasonable to maybe work
It's not.
a month from now to try and work together to
we
look
hear
for an
you.
overall plan.
We hear you, and we'll request a continuance. We're not here to force or to try to.
And I'm not trying to force you.
anything with the
and-
planning board. We appreciate your
be-
time. I would like to know if we could, though, have we met all the other concern, if there's any other information that you're gonna need from us, so we would appreciate that. And,
Well,
certainly-
yeah, and looking at that, you've addressed a couple of things with the staff. There was even the contribution of 5,000 that you addressed. The issuance of NR TA bike racks. I would incorporate in condition number 6 that doesn't exist, but that just as a discussion, now we put that in the decision. But for the most part, you've addressed the other findings and conditions, and obviously the parking is a big stickler with us, and that's what we continue discussing.
Understood.
Barry?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just in that same decision, just make sure you reference the patios as well too, that will be utilized by the public. Attach some type of seating number to it, which will just be helpful. Just so we get a sense of what that looks like as well too. Just trying to think of anything else. Leslie, just one thing I want to run by you at this point. If the town were to take the easement, that also have to be damages awarded, correct? In such a circumstance?
You would have to pay fair market value.
There you go. Okay, I'm trying to avoid the town spending money in a situation and see if the hand has been played somewhat about what may occur next door. And I'm just trying to think as a responsible board, how do we begin to accomplish that? Doesn't mean we, as a board, we would even begin to remotely say, okay, that it's relatively benign. We don't need to do anything with it. Thank you very much. But I just think having that ability somehow to interconnect those two is a very important thing that shouldn't be lost on this board. And so, maybe an easement isn't the answer, but that's why I'm turning to the two of you for, what is the answer to it? So at least we have that latitude as opposed to 2 different applicants looking at it saying, no can do, that's kind of where I'm trying to head to. Not that we can force people, but it's good to be able to at least have that ability to make something happen. Thank
So
you.
With the, did I open it up to the general public yet?
No.
Not to put the cart before the horse and continue, so I'll do that. Okay, I did that.
So, not hearing anything else.
If you're okay with
No
us
motion to
making
continue.
motion to continue, okay,
I think Dave's making that.
I'll make a motion to continue
I'll second.
until the next meeting.
till the next
okay?
meeting.
Yeah.
All
Thank
those
you.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, guys. Okay, moving on, I think we're at 41 West My Comet Road, or WMR Trust, 41 West My Comet Road.
Mr. Chairman.
Not here? Yes,
Sure,
Stephen, are you
Stephen Cohen for
representing?
the applicant. I just want to clarify, I believe one of my filings said road, but it's actually avenue. Or
Okay,
is it the other way around? No, I'm.
yes,
using my-
I'll
but
note that.
It's
Ms.
road.
Eh,
Okay, it's road. I think one of my filings might have said avenue. but
Okay, so
it's
we're,
road.
we're correct in the application.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
correct on the app, yes.
And then, great, thank you.
Okay, so I know that the board infrequently sees the MMD application. And that it's an unusual application for you in the sense that you are acting as a general reviewer of something that is sort of outside most of the commercial projects that you see. So, and I think some of you may never have seen one. So I just want to, sort of generally remind the board of your role here, just for sort of context, that the MMD district is an environmentally sensitive area, and that your job is to review structures that are normally, and to approve structures that are normally used and considered accessory to residential use in order to minimize potential impact on the moorlands environment and the scenic integrity of the area. So that's what we're going to be discussing here. The Moorlands Management District, as you know, is a 10-acre zoning that allows for a 0.5% ground cover, highly restrictive, intended to keep most of the Moorlands Management District empty and open space, which I think we all agree is a good intent, and also to protect the fragile environment there. Most of that district is MISA mapped area, both for environment, both for endangered species of plants and animals. Aside from that, it is a rare habitat that we all want to preserve. The bylaw, as you may know, allows for up to 800 square feet of ground cover and 400 square feet of impervious surface area by right, without a special permit. Obviously, that's highly unusual. Just as a comparison, the zoning bylaw allows for 1,500 square feet of ground cover on all other alternative minimum lots by right, with no restrictions, and I think anywhere in the bylaw on impervious surface, except maybe for the open space requirement within commercial applications. So it's a relatively unusual standard for you to be looking at. The requirement for the board is to do a site plan review, and the site plan review has 3 standards for you to look at. You're supposed to look at protecting the plants and animals that are protected under MISA. As an aside to that, we have already applied to the Mass Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program to get what they call a no-take letter, meaning that you're allowed to do work within a buffered area. This property already has a highly disturbed buffer area, and we are proposing to do work substantially within it. MISA came back and asked us to do a study of one additional plant species that only blooms later in the season. So we have to wait for that blooming period and then go back and report on that. But we expect to get a no take letter from MISA, from the MISA office after that review is done. And we're happy to share that with the board. The second thing is to maximize the views by siting and clustering structures in a way to minimize the impact on the public and environmental views, which in this case we're keeping all the structures clustered, and we're keeping them far apart from other areas. And it's not like a wide expanse of use of the land, and there's lots of land cleared, unencumbered, both on this property and all around it. And the final standard is to protect the vegetation and wetlands by limiting disturbances. So in other words, we don't want to have vast acres of lawn and whatever. There should be as natural as possible. And I think that's what my client has applied for. So I've been through 5 or 6 MMD permits in the past 18 years I've been doing this. And I think that I feel really good about this one in the sense that I'm always telling my clients, let's make sure that we are limiting anything that we're new that we're asking for, that we're putting some give back on the table, and that the numbers are something that the board is going to be able to feel good about. So I'm going to run through those statistics. Well, I'll just tell you in general, what we're applying for is some alterations to the house, the addition of a shed, the addition of a pavilion, which I would call a building with 4 posts in one side, but is otherwise open and has a small pergola on it, and an outdoor shower. And an alteration to the driveway. Those are the pool, I think, and also a pool and a small patio. So those are all the things that are being applied for. The statistics that there's currently a house on the property that's 1,461 square feet. So again, that is a relatively modest ground cover. It's below the 1,500 square feet that that we use as the alternative minimum for undersized lots. And we are applying for no additional ground cover. So I want to say that twice. We're applying for no additional ground cover, which is I don't think I've ever come to this board with an MMD permit that doesn't ask for more ground cover. So I do want to make that clear. We are applying for an addition of 430 square feet of additional second story structure. So in other words, there's additional gross living area added to the structure, but there's no new ground cover. That second story structure, or that second story space, has already been approved by the Historic District Commission. So they felt comfortable with it in terms of its historic integrity and its impact on the scenery. Not that you're bound by that, but just as a comparison. The second thing is that this property has more than, number here, a substantial amount of outdoor decks and stoops that you traditionally consider to be impervious surface. And we are proposing a reduction of those decks and stoops by about 20% down to 1,341 square feet, which is a reduction of 313 square feet. So I rarely, again, come in and ask for a reduction. The alteration would include a substantial reduction of that impervious surface dedicated to decks and stoops. So then what are we asking for? Like I said before, we're asking for a shed. That shed is a 19 by 10.5 square foot shed, which is 200 square feet, or just a hair under. It's just a standard shed. It doesn't have anything fancy in it. It's not really a cabana disguised as a shed. It's for bikes and, stuff that goes in a shed. It's 13.2 inches, 13 feet, 2 inches tall. So it's not excessively tall. It's not 2 stories, anything like that. It built onto that, it would have an open shade pavilion. Next we would have an open shade pavilion again. That's 4 posts with 1 back wall and a roof for some shade with a 128 square foot pergola. So again, just to have some outdoor shade experience, not a large, there's no, whatever. It's not an additional dwelling. It's not an additional, there's no, bathroom, whatever. It's essentially an open structure. Then there's a 18 by 36 pool, which is 648 square feet, and a bluestone patio that's dry laid, that's 200 square feet. 200 square feet, I think, is a relatively modest patio. And again, 18 by 36 is a relatively modest pool. What I think is really important to notice is, and then one other thing is that we are proposing to alter the driveway. The driveway right now is a straight shot. And if you look at the pictures that I submitted, this house is substantially screened from the road and from public areas by all of the natural brush and vegetation, except for where the driveway is, because the driveway is a straight shot up from My Comet Road. And so the intent would be to build an elbow into it, a curve into it, and then fill in the other area so that it would essentially eliminate that view corridor of the structure from the road. And so if you look at the pictures that show that the scrub blocks a bunch of the house, we're hoping that would fill in and then not be limit the visibility with really no change on the disturbed area. There is also a plan that shows a minor alteration to the current disturbed area, where nearly all of the activity that we're talking about here is in already disturbed areas, with a small addition at the back and a substantial reduction at the front. The addition the alteration is about 4,087 square feet of new disturbance, but it's a reduction of 8,968 square feet of area that we're giving back. So it's about a 2-to-1 ratio of area that is currently disturbed that is being revegetated and naturalized. So hopefully the board sees the value of that reduction. I know that there are neighbors here tonight that want to make sure that you're giving this a robust look. I expect you to. I expect that they will have their comments, and we'll try to accommodate them as much as possible. I do want to note that the pool and the shed and the pergola structure are really clustered behind the house and are essentially invisible from anywhere except if you're in this backyard. The natural, because the house is essentially 10 to 12 feet higher in elevation and set so far back from the road. I think it's about 200 feet back from the road, that it's nearly impossible to see anything that's less than 20 feet tall in that area because of the elevation. So the house, so you won't see a pool, you won't see the shed, you won't see anything that's coming in low at that area. And the house itself will look essentially as it does now with some minor additions. So I'm happy to take questions, or I'm happy to wait and see if you have any after the neighbors have spoken. And appreciate your time and attention on this.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Board.
Let the neighbors go first. Yeah,
Okay.
and these things are all.
Open it up to the general public.
So this is almost three.
Open it up to the general public for comment, for questions.
Hi there.
I'm Chris Donlin and I live on West Mycomet Road.
Welcome.
And thank you. And I beg to differ with Attorney Cohen. The house is very visible from the street. And it also has a very large disturbed lawn area that needs to be addressed so that it doesn't become all irrigated. And the lighting should be addressed as well. And I just don't think that a pool and a pool cabana belong in the MMD. You know, the MMD was, you know, for scenic views. It's like Nantucket used to be. And we'd like to keep it that way. And obviously the HDC did not even take the MMD into consideration when it approved the plan for that house with third floor dormers, second floor outdoor viewing areas. I mean, so that's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm Joe Donlin.
Wait, excuse me, Joe, could you just come up to the mic and state your name?
I'm Joe Donlin. We've been coming up to Nantucket since 1976. We've owned a number of houses on the island since 83. And this is a very, very special place. As Chris said, it's probably one of the few places other than maybe Tuckanut that is reminiscing of really Nantucket. What they're proposing to do, this house that exists there that we rented several years over the years while the house was being built or when our children came up with our grandchildren, is the largest house in the whole area by at least 5, if not 7 feet. There's 3 stories on the house. What they're proposing to do is putting dormers. They want to create a house that probably should be on the cliff or out in Pocomo, but not in this area. And we certainly don't need a swimming pool in the area. And as Chris said, the whole backyard and the whole side yard and the whole front lawn is 3 times the size of our area. And we all have about the same amount of footprint. We have 1,500 square feet. That's it. It's a very, very quiet. There's no lights. We don't need a swimming pool. They're 400 yards away from the ocean. That's the biggest swimming pool. And I just think this is just a tragedy to even propose something like this and to put these porches on this house. I mean, the current house right now couldn't support it. They're going to have to build a totally brand new house that again belongs on the cliff. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Donalds reminded me of something that I meant to say, which is that the board actually has some good conditions that it's implemented in other ways that sort of post-state the MMD regulations, which haven't really been updated in a while. And I think that the dark skies bylaw is something that we would already have to apply with, but would expect some heavier restrictions in this case. And I also think that the zoning board, I think primarily through Eleanor and Leslie, has come up with some really good regulations on how to make pools acceptable in rural areas through the VR district. And I think that if the board chose to implement or require those kind of regulations that the zoning board uses in the VR district or some version of those, that it's a good starting place to look at it, at how to do it here, because those are designed to mitigate all of the impacts that pools have on rural districts. So I just wanted to say that those or even a tougher version of those would be a good place to start. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Emily Molden for the Nantucket Land Council. So as you heard, and as I know the board knows, the Moorlands Management District comes with the purpose of protecting the long-term integrity of these natural ecosystems out there, the heathlands and the grasslands and the moors. And the section of your bylaw that covers it, section 13, I believe, really directs the planning board as the special permit granting authority to address negative impacts from structures and uses that are being proposed in this area to preserve that long-term integrity of the environment and the scenic integrity as well. So as far as the proposal before you, we really believe that specifically the elements of the pool, the patio, the pergola, and the shade structure, which I think is shown on one of the plans as a cabana, are not appropriate for this site and are inconsistent with the uses as described and outlined in the bylaw, particularly for a property that has already maxed out the ground cover and impervious surface area that is allowed for this district. I certainly appreciate that the applicant has been working with MISA, and obviously approval from the state about endangered species impacts is important, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they've met the standards that the planning board also seeks to implement and protect. I had a couple of additional questions that I also just wanted to raise. I was a little unclear from the plans about the proposed location for the new shed and how that interacts with the parking area. I know that the driveway is being proposed to be relocated, which I do also have some concerns about. I understand the purpose as far as the driveway, view shed, and visibility, but if that also requires disturbing additional vegetation, I think it's something that really needs to be taken into account. I think one of the purposes is to really minimize any disturbance of adjacent vegetation, which is another one of the reasons why I think that those additional elements are not suited for this site. I also wanted to sort of clarify the proposal of the adjustment to the natural and disturbed areas. The plans weren't particularly clear to me what areas were proposing to be restored or to become naturalized and how that would take place. Again, I think I would be concerned about any disturbance to the existing surrounding vegetation out there, but I didn't really see a clear plan for what was proposed as far as revegetation goes. And I also would echo some of the previous concerns about the size and extent of the lawn area on this property, and understanding that landscaping is actually under your purview to some extent in the Moorlands Management District. If that lawn area is going to become more heavily fertilized or irrigated over time, I'm not sure if and when that practice may have started in the past, but I think it's something you should consider conditioning being in the Moorlands Management District as well as directly on my Comet Pond, and then also would just echo the concerns around the lighting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emily.
Thomas Beretta, 39 West Maya Comet. Some of the things on this plan, one thing is that they're going from a 3-bedroom house to a 5-bedroom. And they're showing the tank and the leach pit. That's probably gonna be upgraded to leach field. So I assume that's probably gonna have to go through Concom, but that's gonna create a very large area, disturbed area, in order to put in that leach field to make it Title 5, I guess, or whatnot, because it's within the. You guys created that new zoning around wetlands and all that with the property. We voted on that at town meeting a couple of years ago, so that's gonna have to get upgraded. The other thing is he said 200 square feet of bluestone patio. If you look at the plans, it shows a patio that's between the house and the pool, but then there's an open wall, a single wall with a pergola. So is that going to have a floor, or is that just going to be dirt? Because that's not listed in here either. The HCC plan shows for a fire pit that's supposed to be built off to the left side of the house. I think I saw it in one of the plans, but it was very tiny and you could probably barely read it. The other thing is that there's a view easement for 39 across that property. And the way the house is set, the shed that they're building, or mini garage or whatever it is, bicycle parking, EV station. That's like literally right on the corner of the easement, which then is going to create all the vehicles that have to be parked in the easement. So, it's everything's pushed forward. And as far as the height of the property being high enough that you don't see it from the road, you're going to see everything there. When you come from Bartlett Farm the other way, you can see people on the back deck of that house. You can see it's flat as a board. So you're going to be able to see it from public road. That back wall is going to stand out for that single pergola. It's going to be, you're going to see it all the way from Ladies Beach, because there's not a single tree between there and Ladies Beach. So the view of it, you are going to see it. Actually, you'll probably actually see it from the tower because of the way it's pitched. It's flat. So as far as not being able to see it, and it's hidden from West Maya Comet Road, technically it's not right, because West Maya Comet Road goes all the way back to the tower. So you will see it from West Maya Comet Road. The pool, let's see what else. Also the driveway, coming up the driveway, that's the way the turn is on the driveway. Basically, I'm just gonna get headlights coming into my house at night when they come up and down the driveway. So that's one of our concerns. And I assume since they're gonna have to do that, they're probably gonna have to go to Concom in order, because it's within the 300 feet of the water. So they'll have to do that. The other issue is because of the short-eared owls and the various plant animals out there. You guys in the past have restricted construction in the MMD to no construction from June to September. So if you'd be kind enough to put that in as far as a restriction, that would be great for the wildlife out there. And there are quite a few owls out there. I've seen them out there. There's a really nice one that hangs on a tree about 300 yards off the back property. So I see them every so often. So, and just so you know, there's a lot of swans on the pond now. So thank you.
Thank you.
You didn't need me at all.
Just one or two quick points with Gifford representing 39 West Maya Comet LLC.
Thank you.
Reminding you of the language as my brother, Mr. Cohen, started this presentation. You guys are in a role that's somewhat unique, but the language that you're following is very specific. It's to safeguard extremely fragile and unique environmental areas via limitations on grading, fencing, landscaping, and driveway locations, these types of things that are right there in front of you. In many situations, it is difficult to say no to an application for a pool or landscaping. And not to say that the applicant is gaming the system, but if this shed was 1 foot larger in square footage, it'd have to be 50 feet off the line under the zone. Through you to Emily. Emily, is the land bank still actively managing the moorlands in this area?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I'm with the land council, the land bank, but no, that's okay. The land bank is still actively managing that area, but I can't speak directly to that
Okay.
management.
I apologize for confusing all my competitors in land management, but they do regularly burn out there. This is a highly visible, highly walked, it's part of the trail system. I think a pool is completely inappropriate in this particular location. It's going to be visible. And you have the opportunity to say no. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else from the general public? I think everyone's spoken. Board members, comments, questions? Go ahead, Dave.
I feel like it's Groundhog Day when it comes to MMDs for me. I just find this application again, it flies in the face of the spirit of the MMD zoning district and, you know, they want to add, they want to go up and not put any more ground cover on. I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but a pool or any disturbance at all of undisturbed spaces is not all right by me. Thank you.
Go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with my peers and staff said it best at this point. While portions of this proposal appear to be acceptable and minor, generally speaking, planning staff would not be supportive of the creation of any new or increased disturbances to the site. I have to agree with that. And the thing that I find troublesome is that the MMD is highly restricted in nature for very good reasons. But the other thing too is, as we've seen before, you grant something that you think will be a very innocent thing, and all of a sudden everyone's coming running around as well too, saying, oh, they got it. Why can't we have it? And then all of a sudden you are dealing with modification after modification, and they have a habit of getting bigger instead of smaller. So it concerns me that it may be once again opening the proverbial Pandora's box on that area. I'm just not in favor of where this is tracking to at this juncture for those very same reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Yeah, I ride my bike here by a lot. And you can see this from Myacomet Road, West Myacomet. I mean, you can be as far as Lady Beach, Little Moxie's Pond. You're going to be able to see this, you know, this land bank parking that's behind the golf course. You're going to be able to see this. And I really don't like that there's going to be so much disturbance on this lot. I'm not going to go to the HTC, but I do think it's pretty massive, and the third floor dormers. So yeah, I'm not in favor of this application.
Matt, do you have something to say before?
Yeah, just a little bit. I'm not shy to say this. I don't like the MMD district. I think it's ridiculous, but we have it. It is ridiculous. LUG2 with 0.5%. Beautiful. I mean, it's crazy, but it happened, and quite frankly, I think it'll be challenged one day. I'll probably hopefully be alive for that, but we did approve, what did we do, Leslie? Didn't we approve a pool in the deck around the corner down towards, like it was like built into the deck? We went around and around a couple of meetings.
I think that was on Matacasham Valley.
Yeah.
Road.
No,
That was. on
it's
the
out
beach.
there.
That,
Yeah.
It's on the beach side of out there.
Yeah.
This one.
that was at 52.
Hold on.
There's one at 53. I don't know if it was in the deck, but it's on the water side.
Something like that.
And then there's there's 3 or 4 up towards like the wall bang area. But there's
Yeah.
one, the closest one I believe is at 53, which
Yeah.
was only approved about
Couple of years ago.
Yeah, within the past 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, and then we had that one towards the wall bang end where we went around and around, and they ended up eliminating the pool. But they got to do something, but I just can't remember what it was. They moved the shed or tore the shed down, or
Yeah, you
I
approved
can't remember.
2, and then the third one that came in, they backed off, and it's just a large deck at the moment.
it's just a deck.
Yeah, so I know I've been involved in 3
Yeah, I know
pools
you
that-
were.
that have been approved in that area. which
You're
I-
the guy that gets the short straw with these MMDs.
But I was not involved in the first one you brought up, 53. I think that was I know that was a different attorney.
But my point of bringing them up is consistency side of it. You know, this is more what we're seeing everywhere else. We wouldn't even have to be involved at all with any of this stuff. This would be all by right through the HDC. So this one's a completely different type of application than the other ones that were questionable. I think there was another one over by those ones that Bucas built. I think a pool thing went on there too, but couldn't see it from anywhere. I'm not 100%, but I think there was one there too. But the thing about these is this is sort of like the other Tom Nevers of non-conforming weird lot sizes, basically all LUG2. And this is what was voted. I mean, it is what it is. It's like a special permit to shingle your house here. I mean, it's crazy. So, you know, it's not the right application for this place. I mean, some of the, as I said, some of the ones that were questionable found their way to some kind of reasonable outcome. This is a little higher level of boldness, I guess, for this zoning district. I'm not gonna say, I mean, it's a great plan as far as like what everybody else is doing, but this isn't anywhere else on Nantucket. So I don't know what to say. Sorry.
You said enough.
Yeah. You're gonna get home for dinner too, John. Amazing.
Abby?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick comment. I like Joe, I actually run through here all the time. And one of the things that the gentleman who lives at 39 mentioned, which I think just as something to think about, is when you run through there, it's extremely quiet. And so also, I think if we think about if they're doing work, it's going to reverberate and be extremely loud, because I know when I've been running, you can hear stuff because the pond is kind of like an echo chamber. And I know you mentioned, I've seen the swans, I've counted like 19 sets, there's so many. And so I do think it's just something to think about if we are thinking about the wildlife, is that any noise, like any construction stuff, it's like magnified in that area. So it's just something to keep in mind when considering it.
Thank you.
You should hear it when they play at the shack at 2 a.m. It reverberates all the way down the pond, so.
Not running at that time, but I can imagine.
Well, just for the record, I'm sensing from the board, and I'm going to make it unanimous. I just see too many things here that are so wrong with this application. You know, looking at negative impacts, even if you look at the performance standards of the plan review, this is why we have this district. When you look at the maximizing protection of the endangered plants and animal species, discharge of pool chemicals, and you know there's going to be maintenance on these pools, that's not going to help the area. And then when you look at the second protection of scenic views, when you're looking at the structure that's going to be proposed and added to it, you know, looking at what exists there, looking at what's proposed there, there's, you know, really it does not look 3 stories. It just doesn't look like it's for this particular area. And as Nat said, other areas of the islands, yeah, this would fly, this would conform, this would fit right in. In this particular area, I don't agree that it should, or, you know, just the 2 points that I made are enough. 1 was enough, but 2 out of 3 in my book, being consistent with this district as Dave has been in the past. I'm with him, and I think I voted the same. I just don't think this application is right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have just one question through you to Mr. Barata. What were the dates that you had suggested for the owls? I want to make sure that we get that right.
I believe you guys.
For construction purposes. Yeah, for the June 15th through September 15th or something.
Yeah, I think that's what you guys.
Generally
Pretty
in
much
downtown and
Well, that's
special
a
permits
special
and,
permit
yeah,
also.
that's special
Yeah,
permits and exactly, yeah.
Right.
The
Okay.
request for that would be through a special permit.
Mr. Chairman, we can look at an old decision because we
mean,
do have construction limitations that are specific to this area that are very different from other
I know they've
locations.
done it in the past for a few,
Yeah.
so.
And I don't think we would oppose those kind of construction limitations, as well as, you know, your concern with the chemical discharge. Again, a lot of that stuff is really handled well under the VR district rules that have been developed at the zoning board. But I hear the board's concerns. I will circle back with my clients and we'll see what we can do to try to address some of those. And if there are no additional comments, I'm happy to request a continuance to the next meeting.
Make
Okay.
a motion.
Seeing
Anything
no
else?
other,
Right to do
before we continue, any other comments from the public while we're all here in person?
I just want to make a comment in regard to the actual application they did with HDC. I tried to go to the HDC meeting, but it got pushed like to the 7th one. And by that time, after the 3rd or 4th one, I couldn't make it. And it just, with the HDC backlog, it just, there was no way to go to it to even speak in regard to it. Next thing you know, they called it and they passed it. So that was done. So Otherwise, I would have said something about the dormers and the porches and all that.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, seeing no other further. Public.
I'll second. yeah.
I'm gonna make the motion
Okay.
kind of as
And
continue.
I'm guessing that is for next month.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
continue to the main meeting, please.
Motion's been made to continue by Barry, seconded by Nat. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
And unanimous. Thank you. Thank you all. Let's see, moving on, what do we have? Public hearing zoning articles, zoning bylaw amendment, off-street parking requirements.
Yeah, so we are bringing this back, just to adjust the motion. Let me see, I sent you some proposed language this afternoon. When we reviewed the article with town council, they informed us the way the article was composed, it wasn't compliant with the housing choice legislation. So this article was twofold. It one satisfies a suggestion of the housing production plan, but it also was to move forward the initiative set forth by the state through housing choice legislation. So we wanted to just make some adjustments to make it compliant with that, the requirements for that legislation. So let me share my screen. So this is what we had initially put forward. And the proposed motion would be to reduce the existing counts that are 1 per bedroom to 0.75 per bedroom. Where before the proposal was to allocate per structure, not calculation per bedroom, not to exceed what was originally proposed. So not to exceed 4. So that's really the key difference here is just a language change. You want to have any questions?
Mr. Chair, I'll just add
ahead,
that,
Liz.
that the point of this is to make it completely clear that the parking calculations are being reduced
Mhm.
across the board.
Did I read something where it made it okay to park on the street, or am I making that up?
I
Did
mean,
I-
as an inclusion,
Yeah,
well,
Well, I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to.
I
but-
don't know, maybe it was just
yeah.
some light reading I was doing on.
Well, all of your required parking spaces have to be on the lot.
Right,
And there's no waiver for that unless you come and ask for a waiver.
no, I'm not asking for it. I thought it was kind of funny that I even thought of it. I don't know why. Strike that. Go ahead, Stephen.
Through you, Mr. Chair, can we just get clarification for the duplexes? That's an aggregate, right? It's not per unit of the duplex?
Yes, that's an aggregate. So the maximum of 4 would be for the entire
Both
structure, both
Okay.
units combined.
Thank you.
So what are we looking here? Just,
So we
Hmm.
re-advertise, we'd need to reopen the public hearing. If there's anyone here to speak on it, we'd take their comments. If not, we'd close the public hearing and our request would be for you to approve this motion and comment as before
Okay,
you today.
just as we were.
So-
Okay, so with that, I'll open it up to the public since we still have public here.
And through you, Mr. Chair, do we actually officially need to reopen the public hearing?
Well, I guess it's technically a new public hearing, but yes, it's
Okay,
a public
so
hearing
Let's
nonetheless.
get all of our ducks in a row so this doesn't come back to haunt us. So I'm gonna make a motion, reopen the public hearing.
Okay.
For this.
Motion was made by Barry, second by Joe to reopen this for the public. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Now, as discussed, we'll open it up to the public. Emily again.
Nada.
Seeing
Motion.
Nobody from the general public, look for a motion to close.
So move, sir.
Second.
Okay, motion has been made by Barry, seconded by Joe to close. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, is there a motion?
Motion that we give this a positive recommendation to town meeting.
Second.
Oh, with a quantum vote
With
of
one- okay.
majority.
Is it 2/3 for this? or
This is a majority vote.
Just majority. Okay, thank you, Megan.
Second. All right, motion been made by Barry, seconded by Dave. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No? Okay, unanimous?
And Mr. Chair, this will be provided as a technical amendment motion because the warrant's been
Yeah, I
printed.
was just gonna say.
And you do not have a
Yeah.
motion printed in the warrant.
Okay,
Got it.
thank you. All right, public comment on that wasn't on the agenda. Is there anyone? Emily? Seeing none. Okay, thank you. And other business, we talked about this at last meeting. Carl Borchert has graciously accepted the Coastal Resilience Committee position, and we are looking for a vote to appoint.
So moved.
Second. Okay, motion's been made by Barry, seconded by Dave. All's in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Carl.
All right, and the just announcing annual town meeting is set for Saturday, May 6th at 8 o'clock AM. And our planning board regular meeting is Monday, May 8th at 4 PM, and that is via Zoom. This is a little interesting today. I counted at most, there were 24 people in the audience. There were a couple of comments from people that actually liked the Zoom because they were able to voice their opinion. It is kind of refreshing to see a face-to-face meeting, but we are going back to the Zoom and it is what it is.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all
Thank you.
and entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Motion is made by Barry, second by Dave. Motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff.
I was so cold, I just needed.
Yeah, bring them out, girl. Let's go. Yeah. No, I forgot. That it was like, oh my, that when I was reading, I was like, oh my God. I had to like brush up on my.
Oh, my God, yeah. Yeah,
I know, I always get that from you. Well, I have CBA, might as well leave. Oh, I didn't know it was coming.